Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the hearing to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory in the home and the traditional lands of the Ojibwe, Cree, Dakota people, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Ron Merritt. I'll be your chairperson this afternoon. To my left is Mr. Ian Mahone, and via Zoom, Cynthia Stevens. They are panel members. Representing the city of Winnipeg is Mr. Merrick Frolick, and our recording secretary is Jaswinder Kumar. This afternoon, we'll be hearing an application for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matter for which revision is requested has been described in each application, and we will limit discussions to those matters. The statements that are made at the hearing are sworn testimony, and anybody speaking in these matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent, along with a city administration. We make our decisions based on the evidence provided at this hearing, and will issue a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decision in respect to application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to application of exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the board's order. In respect to the hearing this afternoon, I will confirm the points of appeal with your properties to be addressed, and each applicant will follow following the swearing in. It'll be then the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have. It'll be then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each party will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all evidence about the application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket this afternoon. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the public record. This afternoon, we'll be hearing items 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Mr. Kumar, can you please swear in the assessor and affirm the applicant, and also Mr. Mercury should be sworn in too.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Merrick Frolick.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, please state your full name.
Rocky Neufeld.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mr. Mercury, please state your full name.
James Mercury.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Frolick, we're going to go to the docket, and we'll deal with 130 Omar's Creek Boulevard.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm just wondering if Mr. Mercury is only here for one matter. There's
Okay.
a penalty request for 99 Lowson.
Yep.
If that.
Okay, that's fine, Rocky. Mr. Frolick, will go for 90 Lowson Crescent. So I understand there's a, pardon me, it's 99, right?
99. Yes.
99 Lowson Crescent. That's the non-swap issue. Okay. Mr. Frolick, take us through this property just a little, and then describe the non-co-op, please.
Yep, for sure. File number is 223795. Roll number is 1000143 6900. Assessed value for 2023 is $2,642,000. We're asking for the value to be confirmed, and we're also asking that the request that the burden of proof be placed on the applicant for non-cooperation, 53(3)B of the MAA. If the reduction in the assessment is ordered, that will be follow 54(3.2) of the MAA.
All right.
If we go on to
Do you have the evidence of the non-co-op?
yeah, all I have here is so in terms of the letters that have been sent out on page 16, and for whatever reason, I don't have it here, but I don't have the initial letter that was sent out to the applicant with the registered letter showing it was item number LP 6575627333CA. It was delivered on June 29th of 2021. Signature was unavailable or not requested. And then subsequently, there's the history of us sending out the documentation, the letter towards to the property owner at 99 Lawson. That's all I have at this time.
You have the, I see that there's a tracking record.
Yep.
Is there not? Yeah.
Yes, there is. And
Okay.
that's what I had referenced. In regards to LP 657562733.ca.
Mr. Newfield, Mr. Mercury, your acknowledgement or your
Yes.
rebuttal?
Yes, so just before perhaps, Mr. Chair, if I just ask a couple clarification questions, Mr. Froelich, and then we can proceed with our submission on this.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, Mr. Froelich, that just looking at your evidence here, you don't have in your evidence the actual letter that would have been mailed?
And we have it on file here, Jamie,
Okay.
but it's just that, just with regards to the workload and everything like that,
Right.
it's, I just missed it.
Understood.
Plain and simple.
Understood.
Our process wouldn't change, right?
Right. Well, typically, when we see these deferral order requests, we do see not only the letter, but we actually see proof of delivery to the sender with a signature, do we not?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay, so in this case, well, we don't have the letter, perhaps through an oversight. This would, particularly at page 17 of your brief, it would be clear that in fact, this was not received by the owner.
It was, it was not.
It was actually, it was returned to sender, as you can see, on June the 29th, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, so.
And I think what ended up happening here, like now that I'm looking at this thoroughly, it's just like because we're looking at the 2020 mailer. Yeah, so like we have records showing that stuff was sent out on June 15th and June 9th. And you know what I mean? And so we
Okay. Yes. All right. Really, those are my only questions of the assessor, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
I had one question. I've been working for Univar for quite some time, and they're headquartered in Montreal. Does that mailer indicate that the Fort Richmond post office was where the letter went to?
just give me 1 sec here, Mr. Neufeld. Reprint mailer. Amended June. Cover letter. You know what it is. I ended up getting here 19 notice. Just It says Richmond, BC. That's where we sent it. So there may have been changes with regards to the ordering. Let me just take a look here in terms of notes and remarks. In 2017, tax notice does not come. You know, like, so based on our records here in 2017, we mailed out to on November 30th to the BC address. I've been advised that the reference number you could use in this case could be my name and number. So we have instruction to mail it to Richmond, BC.
Richmond, BC. I'm looking at your page 17. It says location, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Fort Richmond Post Office.
Yeah. Okay, it's there. So
And they're not in Richmond, BC. They're in North Van, but also an affiliate. But that's aside from the point. Your paper says Fort Richmond, Winnipeg, right?
Our paper says Winnipeg, Winnipeg, Winnipeg.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
and Fort Richmond, not Richmond, right?
That well, no, 2020. Mailers. That's number 3. Letter 2020. Here. It says Van Horn Way, Richmond, BC.
But that's not what page 17 says.
No, you know what? The page 17 here is a different income and expense mailer. There's been a mistake in our side of things because what we have here is that we have the item number, which is where the information is different than what we have here. We're showing 9800 Van Horn Way, Richmond, BC. And the reference number that I have here is different than what I have in my brief.
Okay. All right.
So
go ahead.
So Mr. Froelich, just based on what we've reviewed here, is the assessor still actually pursuing this deferral order?
Well, the point is the information that I have here is lacking, right? So I have conflicting information. So
okay,
I'll let the panel decide how they want to proceed with that.
Okay, if the answer to that is yes, then we'll proceed with our submission then.
Well, I think what's happening here is obvious. So I don't. You can proceed with however that you want to proceed.
All right, very well, very well.
Ms. Stevens, questions that you have?
Well, I'm just to clarify. So we have the wrong tracking document. You don't have an IME from the applicant, so you're assuming nothing ever arrived. But you, in your brief here today, we don't have proof of that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mahone. No, I don't have anything now. Thanks. All right, we're going to shut it down, Jess, and we'll have a meeting with the panel members and come back to both parties.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right, we'll call a hearing back to order. And in regards to the non-co-op issue that was being sought by the city, it is denied by the panel members. So Mr. Froelich, you will be presenting this property. So do you want to do this property first? We might as well continue and let Mr. Mercury go.
Yeah, I'm already here, but it's just funny how nothing matches here, and I don't know why. And it's just, it's
All right.
it's not a good look for me right now, but it's just.
So Mr. Mercury, and Mr. Newfield, Mr. Mercury is here for that reason only, right?
Yes, I will depart now and allow you to proceed. Thank
All
you.
right. All right, thank you, Mr. Mercury.
Thank you.
Mr. Frolick, and Mr. Newfield, where do you want to continue with this property?
It's your call. We're fine. We're here all day.
Whatever you want to do. We're versatile.
I'll start just reading away with regards to 99 Lawson.
Okay. Floor is yours, Mr. Frolick.
Yep, assessed value we have is 2,642,000. Building has been built between 1990 and 2006. We have the effective year of 1990. Wall heights are between 12 and 21 feet. Land area is 200,326. Leasable area we have is 35,592. On page 2, you have some pictures of the subject property. I've never inspected this property. On page 3, you have a general overview of where it's located at in the southwest quadrant of the city of Winnipeg. And there's an overhead shot there, and there's a couple more shots on page 4. What we have here for the building is that we have a heated area of 30,292 square feet at $6.96. And then we have some outdoor space of 5,300 square feet that are $3 a square foot. The GPI is 226,732, factoring a vacancy of 3.5, 3% expenses, and 385 for shortfall. We come up with a net operating income of 207,436. Using a cap rate of 7.85%, we come up with a value of $2,642,000. What we have over here is we have some selected rents here that are in the neighborhood, all ranging from we've got the low one at the 361, and then we got the high one at $12. They're all between 2014 and 2019. And the leasable areas are all within the same range and reason. On the bottom of page 7, we're just talking about the investment trends in the Winnipeg investment marketplace. How there continues to be strong demand for warehousing and logistics. Market has a renewed interest for institutional investors and a growing appetite for larger acquisitions. And what we have here is we just have a picture of the cap rates from the first quarter of 2021. On page 8, we got some additional information with regards to what's happening in the Winnipeg industrial marketplace, both from 2 major players, and just giving you a general overview. What I've done here is some recent board revision appeals that have taken place recently. In 2020, there was a value of $2.7 million. It was cut to $2,195,000. 2018, the value was at $3 million. It was cut to $2,497,000. And in 2016, we got a value of $2,379,000. It was confirmed in 2016, but we eventually signed a COA at $2,190,000, which is actually lower, which is actually like $5,000 higher than the assessment from last year. And knowing that the Winnipeg industrial marketplace hasn't gone down in value, we find it hard to believe that some of the values that the applicant is seeking. What we have here behind me is we're just showing the municipal board COA, showing that the value was signed off at $2,190,000 and the subsequent paperwork that went along with it. That concludes my formal presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Phil, questions?
Yeah, so on your page 5, this was all values generated by the model.
That's correct.
And the 5,300 square feet, that's for the unheated space?
That's correct.
Okay. The vacancy, is this a citywide number or is it supposed to be a Fort Garry number?
It's a Fort Garry number.
And where does this come from?
all the data that we collect from income and expense mailers throughout the city of Winnipeg, when people complete their income and expense mailers, we use that data to build our models. And then we also look at what else is happening in the marketplace within the city of Winnipeg.
Did you look at any outside sources of information on?
We always look at outside sources, Mr. Neufeld.
So do you know what the Johnson report called for Fort Garry?
Well, when it comes to the Johnson report, with regards to Fort Garry, we do have it here. And I guess our approach to valuation is different than your approach, because when we look at the Johnson report, there are 3 actual reports that are given. So there's the total inventory. Then there's the June industrial vacancy rate summary of total inventory. There's a June investment inventory for vacancy rate by district. And then there's also the June multi-tenant investment industrial vacancy rates. And so what we do is we use actually data from 2020. We don't use post-reference data in our vacancy analysis. And then if we actually want to look at, because I talked about it in my brief, but if we're actually looking at the Capital Group here with regards to the Southwest vacancy, their vacancy rate is 3.9%, and we're at 3.5%. So we're pretty close.
Are you referring to something in your report?
Yes, it was on
The page?
it was on page 8. The Capital Group report.
For the Southwest.
Yeah.
Now, is this property single tenant or multi-tenant?
This is a single tenanted building.
Okay. And are you aware, the zoning is M3, are you aware of the planning department's future plans for this area?
Well, it won't be M3 moving forward. This property's grandfather clause then to be M3, and moving forward, there can't be any sort of a similar M3 type of developments in the area.
On your page 3, those are rail cars, correct?
Yep.
And so there's a rail spur going into this property, and the property, your picture is a bit clipped out. What is immediately to the east of the subject?
I would have to the east.
Yeah, in Linden Woods, single family home, correct?
Oh yeah, it's a housing development.
Okay. Now, in regard to the usage that they have, I believe you are aware of what they do in this site?
Yeah, it's farm chemicals, I do believe.
Yes, okay. And as such, it's a usage that, and are you aware of the efforts they made to try to change their usage lately? I know we've discussed it, and if you don't want to testify, I'll do it. It's fine, but
Well,
I'm just,
Mr. Neufeld, we dealt with 167 Lawson. We didn't deal with 99 Lawson, so that's a different property.
no, it came up, but that's fine. This is, I'll deal with it. Is the 7.85% cap rate, what went into this? Do you know?
Well, it looks at a variety of factors. It looks at location, looks at size, it looks at age.
Okay, and my understanding is that the model cap rate does not take into account environmental issues unless it's manually changed. Is that about right?
Well, you know what? And I think maybe for this property here, and I can't recall, I'd have to double check, but I think maybe we did an adjustment for that to have it as a bit higher cap rate for the same reason that you mentioned.
Okay.
And just bear with, yeah, that's the other property. Continue.
No, just one second. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Stevens, questions?
My only questions are on your comparable rents. So most of these properties are smaller than the subject, correct?
Well, they are smaller, yes.
Okay, so how would that affect the rent comparing to a property that's larger by quite a bit to some of these?
Well, it's within the range. Like say for example, you know, if I'm looking at some of my comparables here, the rent that we're using for the heated space of $696 seems to be within the range of the subject property, because like it is a smaller space, but parts of it is a newer building here as well. So, you know, parts of it was 1990. So whatever adjustments that were made for a leasable area could be factored in by the subject property being newer.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Mahone.
Yes, I've got a couple questions with respect to the contamination and the effect that the manual adjustment that was made to the cap rate. First of all, what is the nature of the contamination, and is it on the affected sites that Winnipeg, or sorry, that the city or that the province carries in the provincial website?
Well, I don't know if it's on the province list on the website. I know Mr. Newfield has talked about the nature of the building. How we end up looking at it is that it is a warehouse facility. It has 30,000 square feet of warehouse space, and the rent that we've established for it seems to be reasonable for the area. And in terms of like the usage of it, so like say for example, if it is on the contamination list, and I don't know that, the point is moving forward, if it was a different sort of business that moved into it, the nature of it would, all the old material would go out, new material would come in after they would clean it and sanitize it. Because Mr. Newfield and I had a similar property at 167 Lawson, whereby sure it contained a lot of contaminated or not potentially hazardous material, but at the end of the day, once that material is removed, the negative aspects of that product would not impact the ability to be a warehousing facility. And that's our train of thought going forward with regards to this property.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
I thank you. Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
Thank you. The subject property, we have our description as well, which matches what the assessor says. Point out something on the site. So it does have rail spur access. What they do, their primary product is antifreeze and glycol products. And so the rail car house is unheated, and the bulk glycol storage space is unheated, because I guess you don't have to keep antifreeze warm in the winter. But that's what their main distribution is. The background on this is that when they went to add an additional product line to this, remember they came into this site in 1990. At that point, there was no Linden Woods beside them. Now there is. So they were turned down for modification to their site for the environmental reasons. And as a result, they ended up renting a site on the old former sugar beet lands for their additional product line. They're still carrying on the glycol shipping here, and those are outside tanks as well for the glycol. And the residence is now built up on the other side, on the east side of the tracks, up to the tracks. So it is a neighborhood issue. The city planning department about 10 years ago didn't freeze, but they laid down that future development would be M2 orientation, not M3. So M3 is for more noxious users. And like, for example, right now in there's a scrap yard, there's a waste oil recycler, there's an aluminum fabricator, a brewery, and hazmat storage. This is hazmat storage. So M2 won't allow any of that. It's all to move the lands into uses that would complement the IKEA complex, because M2 allows big box warehouse and retail. That's the direction it's going in. And you also note that on the other side of Lawson, there are now 2 brand new car dealerships. So it's gentrification of the lands. and freezing of the uses. So as chemicals change in your business, you can't just be married to one chemical and that's the only one, because things can happen. I can get, for example, they had Roundup in one of their buildings. Now Roundup you can't get anymore on a retail basis. So there are different chemicals that come in and different ways of handling it, but zoning is freezing them out. And that's really the downside here. As far as the environmental goes, in 2007, the province stopped publishing the master list, and now it became a request on demand only. But the way it works is every time there's something goes out, whether it be permit or anything, or zoning change, or mortgages from sales, there will go out a requirement to do your environmental. There's phase 1, which is paper search. This one fails. Phase 2, which is then drilling to determine if there's anything in the ground. And then if there's a requirement for remediation, then it gets issued at that time. So we're rather assuming that there is, cap rates and risks, and then real estate have to do with your perception of risk and knowing what they're handling, and knowing there's a rail spur. The investor would say we have to factor that in. It's not a question of innocent until proven guilty. It's more like guilty until proven innocent, and that's just the nature of value. The approach that was done for valuation on this, I didn't do. I was trying to communicate with Mr. Frolick earlier in the day, and I personally would have probably put a higher rent on this and a higher cap, because that's the way you treat hazmat storage. You can command a higher rent for it, but your caps are very high. So if you could probably get what the assessor is saying is the rent, but then the cap should be in the 8.5%, 9%, at least 2 points higher than your normal product to deal with the risk. So I mean, I was doing the math, and that's where this would come out if I'd raised the rent and raised the cap. So there's no point changing it. But for the record, I would suggest the assessor's rent is fine, and with a cap rate of about 8.75, and I can calculate that number. But on the other hand, a cap rate is to take into account future use, and I think that the future use is not going to be what it is. And I think this is one property that will probably default to land value, and the land value I think is well represented by a value in and around 400,000 an acre. That's what the land immediately north of it sold for. There was a leftover land for Gordon's Foods, and it went for 400 an acre. Similar land in a similar neighborhood that had similar uses. So that would put the value probably a little over $2 million, and but then less cleanup. So my personal opinion would be, if I had done this, would be to put 400,000. And I did warn Mr. Frolick I was going to do something verbally today. Would be 400,000 an acre on the 4.6 acres, which is 1,840,000. However, the valuation as income is actually, it's incorrect. Now, a point on the vacancy. The rates that we used were, we try to blend the experience of the Winnipeg market, and we used the single tenant investment industrial rate, because you know what, there's no such thing as a non-investment vacancy rate. They don't exist, because the owner, Johnson does track, as Mr. Frolick said, the entire inventory, but when the owner has care and control of a site, is it really vacant? The only way you know is when you offer it for lease. And the rate on single tenant investment industrial for Fort Garry at this point was 17%. Now, I hear this all the time. Johnson is, I'm using the post reference number. I'm not. I know Mr. Johnson well. He produces this report in December and puts it together by March and in 21 and publishes it in June. That's like saying that anyone who writes a book on history has to publish it at the time it occurred. So you want to know about Napoleon, you better read a book written in 1812. That's not the way it works. All of our workups today deal with pre-reference material, and we report them post-reference. Mr. Johnson's doing the same thing. But for the record, the 2020 rate was 18.9, which is higher. So what we do is we looked at the 17, and then we looked at the overall city rate of 6.2 and just took the midpoint of it. Fort Garry did have bad experiences, and the report is very good, and there's no mysteries here. I can name off every single building in Fort Garry that he reported with a vacancy problem, along with the square footage and the asking rates. That's what this report has. And I personally have been in many of them because the change. The concept that industrial is thriving is false. Industrial, there's not one type of industrial, there's many types. There was one type of industrial that thrived during COVID, and that's distribution, where more and more products came in for direct distribution to households rather than through retail facilities. But the other types of industrials did not thrive. Now, this business would have been rather neutral during COVID because they catered to the farmers, and farmers kept growing. But the neighborhood that they're in is not the type of business they have, isn't that style. So I would have expected something more static here, not thriving. You know, there's places on, for example, in this reference here, the Liquor Commission put their warehouse up for as vacant, 160,000 feet. That just skews it off. So that's what we have to look at. Now, the other factors we use actual costs. We use market-derived information, non-recoverable costs. The assessor's model doesn't. The world does. Our reports on page 35 and 36, a sampling of industrial, retail, and office sites. There are non-recoverables. The NOI is not derived from an artificial formula. It is the cash that ends up in the owner's hands after all the bills have been paid. And there must be an allowance for non-recoverables because every property has them. So the other factors in here are correct. It's merely a case of having essentially have the income go up 10% and the cap rate go up 10%, and they'll counterbalance each other. So the income value, 1,563,000. The value that I think the highest and best use, which would be the land, 1,840,000, and I apologize, that's verbal. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Newfield. Mr. Frolick?
So is there anything preventing it from being a 35,000 square foot warehouse that doesn't store chemical material that would provide a basic warehousing facility?
Oh, yeah, because you need now a new occupancy permit for a change in use. New occupancy permit means going through the process, which means dealing with the neighbors. So,
but there's a lot of warehousing space that's in the neighborhood that runs and operates. There's variety retail in the neighborhood. So the likelihood of going through that process isn't as difficult as you pertain. Because being an M3 facility, yes, but the standard use for other type of warehouses would not seem to be an issue from my perspective.
Well, okay, you're missing the part about abutting residential zones. There are about 8 or 9 properties on Lowson that abut the residential zone. So that is your overriding interest. The ones that you're talking about, for example, you saw some industrial sites between Lowson and Kenniston go to become car dealerships. Residents didn't have a right to vote on those because they didn't abut their land. This one they do. And that's why it was stopped before when they tried to get another, bring in another product line, and they had to rent a place elsewhere. The grandfathering of usage would be, let's say you had a noxious use, say it was a scrapyard, which there is one, and it was sold, and the guy's going to continue to operate it as a scrapyard. can't touch him. He gets to do it as long as he continues it within a year. If, however, he says, I don't want to be a scrapyard anymore, I actually want to dismantle metal and cut it up and sell it in a different type, he can't get it. It's very specific as to what it is. And that's what I'm saying turns this into a land that's been stuck by forced gentrification. And without the benefits of having a good site, like the car dealers have the good site on Keniston. These guys are backspaces. So might make a good parking lot for cars.
But the issues that you're arriving are specific to a certain industry, to a warehouse that would store carpet or a part supplier. Like the likelihood of a new scrapping yard occurring in the southwest quadrant makes little sense because the high cost of land in this area. So the arguments that you're making are not conducive to what would be the highest and best use. A scrapyard in this location would not be the highest and best use. Other type of warehousing facilities would be.
Well, what I'm saying is I'm quite doubtful that would be the case, because again, you're still talking about industrial style usages. If you wanted to redevelop it with a doctor's office, that'd get a pass, but that also cost a lot of money to do.
Well, there was but one of your clients is a Fort Garry Breweries, where they've done an expansion, where they've done pool warehousing, and so couldn't this facility actually have pools as well, or stir?
No, Fort Garry Breweries is on the other side of the road between Lowson and Keniston. Neighbors don't have a say. Now, the ones that are impacted are, as you're aware, 167 and 99 Lowson, and there's a couple more on the backside that would be impacted by this. There's another one today, actually, we're going to hear about.
So how come when in your analysis you didn't include the vacancy data for the previous years in 2018 and 19? Because the 2021 report, when it came up in the springtime or June of this year, how come you haven't included the 2019 or the 2020 vacancy data?
Well, as I mentioned, the 2020 was at 18.9. The 2019 is so far before the reference year. And I bear in mind that the legislators, when in their wisdom, decided we reassess every 2 years, well, this time 3, because markets change. So we can't dwell on what happened 3 years ago. We only dwell what's happened in the previous 2 years. So we had a choice.
The end of 2019 would only be 13 months away from an April 1st, 2021 reference date.
No, the 2019 data that is in here, remember, still suffers from a 6-month time lag. These are always the dates of the publication of the book. Every Johnston report has a 6-month time lag. So 2019 end would be, well, this one here, I'm looking at the June 2019 is actually December 2018. So that does put it 2 years out of date.
Okay. You talked about income stream and recoveries. Do you have any of that in your brief with regards to the subject property?
It's owner occupied, so all of their expenses are they don't have a tracking of it because they don't have to collect rent. There are industrial properties in there that are rented, and the percentages are very well supported.
No other questions.
I thank you. Ms. Stevens?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mahoney?
Just a couple. I'm looking at your page 3, the industrial rental rates. Just going down the list. How many of those, I see Lowson, 110 Lowson, how many others are in the southwest quadrant of the city, of those comparable cities?
Okay.
Is Lowson the only one?
110 Lowson, 1370 Sony. That's Sony's parallel to McGillivray.
Right.
What this chart was designed to do was to give us a citywide average, and you can see that's how the person who did it came up with the $5. It's actually mathematically generated, and these are all represent clean rents. And I'm just looking to see if we included a few others here. The Fort Garry region is rather low. The inventory is lower than most, so that's why most of the rents would be outside. That's all we had in the list.
Okay. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. Summation, either party?
I'm fine.
Yeah, I do just have a brief revision to the number. I told you it's wrong, and I don't like wrong numbers. I'm thinking that there's nothing really wrong with the assessor's rent. I think what's wrong with it is his vacancy and his cap. When I put in his rent with a higher cap for the environmental, it's $1,898,000. So that's fairly consistent with what I think the land value is at $1,840,000. And I won't do this anymore.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, okay, sorry, Mr. Neufeld, can I just ask, so you're using, you're dropping the assessor's rent into your workup, is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, yes.
Alright.
But I've changed my cap rate because the person who did this, that wasn't, I've been in this place numerous times, and this is hazmat storage. So it's not gonna get any nice cap. I put 8.75. But it does bring up my value to $1,898,000.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Neufeld, would the property owner sell this property for $1,898,000?
Well, yeah, likely, because they sold the one down the street for a bargain basement price. So when they're getting out of the business, they're getting out of the business. But the difficulty in that is the laws of Manitoba. It's a question on who's going to have to take, what is the degree of cleanup required, and the former owner has to take responsibility for it. So it's difficult to answer that.
What property was that sold?
167.
Well, but that wasn't on a clean sale though, Mr. Neufeld. And that sale was significantly higher than the actual assessment.
It sold.
That's no, Mr. Neufeld, you didn't use that. No questions. Thank you, Mr. Neufeld.
Answering your question, not making up stuff.
All right, gentlemen, let's press on. Number 130, Omens Creek Boulevard, Mr. Pollock, your presentation.
Yeah, let me pull up my brief, please. Thank you. File number is 22-2662, roll number is 130954, 26,600. Properties at 130 Omens Creek, assessed value is $13,311,000. Property was built in 2000. It has 31 feet wall height. Land area is 358,198. Leasable area is 112,558, and we have a land to building ratio of 3.19. We're asking that the value has been to be confirmed, and that there are outstanding 18 and 20 municipal board values. The agent wanted a 2016 value for 2020, which was not appealed to the municipal board. Property owner has been compliant with regards to completing the income expense mailer. There was a sale in the past, but it's 12 years away from the reference date. Bottom of page 2 shows one of the pictures of the property. Very nice. I've never inspected this property, and on page 3 gives us an overview of McCore Management helped locate and broker this property, which boasts the development of state-of-the-art 120,000 square foot warehouse. Currently, this property is 100% fully leased. Our approach to add value by meeting the HOOP's specific requirements. Just some overviews. Outcome: building was 100% leased, above expectations, and continues to be 100% leased. 130 Omens was subsequently sold to a local investor and to date still remains a prize in their portfolio. And on the bottom of page 3 just shows you the breakdown of the tenants and how the building's laid out. Page 4 shows where it's located at, northwest quadrant of the city of Winnipeg. And there's some additional pictures on page 4 and 5. What we have here is that on, just bear with me here for 1 sec. Yep, so we have 112,558 to come up with a model rent of $912,003. The model rent works out to $8.10. We're using a 4% vacancy, 3% expenses, 385 for shortfall to come up with a net operating income of $831,923. We're using a 6 1/4 cap rate to come up with a value of $13,311,000. If you look at the model rents and you look at what the actuals are, the actual rents are higher than our model generated rent. We're at $9, $8.83, and $8.20. There's some additional rents that are in the neighborhood, all in the northwest quadrant of the city of Winnipeg. Some of them are a bit older, but some of them are newer. And so the rental rate that we're using is quite reasonable based on the actuals that are being generated and our comparables. On page 11, you see shows how McCore Management completes the income expense mailers for us on a timely basis. And on page 21 shows the rental revenue and the operating expenses that they have located here. And that concludes my formal presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Feld.
Yes, you were discussing the sale. Weren't you told, I'm pretty sure I told you that one of the tenants bought the place?
No, I don't recall having that conversation with you.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I thought we discussed it.
Not at all. This is the first time I've ever done this property.
Okay, when a tenant buys the building, it probably, would you think it meets the definition of market value?
Well, the point is that sale was in 2008, and I would have to actually look at the terms of the sale and to see if it was financed. And there are a lot of factors that need to be considered when looking at a sale. I didn't use the sale in my reference because.
Okay, if you didn't use the sale, I'm just want to put it in that category. You didn't use it, we're not looking at it. Is that fair then?
No, but I wanted to be mindful of the history of it, and this is what we have it assessed. This is what it sold for in 2008.
Now in your cap rate chart, page 8, which row does this fit into? Is this a multi-tenant B?
Well, it would be a multi-tenant and it would be an A.
You don't have a row for that though. That's why I asked that. But it doesn't matter, the rate's the same, right?
Well, the point is, we don't have a rate done by the outside agencies, but our cap rate in the 20th percentile was, for a multi-tenant a day was 5.55. The
20th percentile and the 80th is 7.45. And so, correct. And then the model put this at 6.25.
Yep.
Okay.
Based on the size.
And vacancy, was this supposed to be a neighborhood specific vacancy? Well,
the vacancy that we use, the 4%, is indicative of the vacancies that we have in our database with regards to the area.
Do you and shortfall? What is shortfall in place to cover?
What's in shortfall in place?
Yeah. What?
We have $3.85.
Right. What is it supposed to cover?
Well, there are situations where properties are vacated.
Where they're vacated.
Yeah, but this property is 100% full, so it's shortfall is not an issue here because there's no loss of revenue.
No, I understand that, but it's in place for the impact of the vacancy. And just, you can confirm that's for covering utilities, taxes, and looking after the place while it's vacant. That's the estimated cost. Is that fair?
That is correct.
Okay, good. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens.
No questions, thank you.
I thank you, Ms. Mahone.
No questions, thank you.
I have none. Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
Thank you. Now, you probably looked ahead and read this, and so do you want me to argue rent for a difference and vacancy for a difference of $10,000? Probably not.
No.
Because that's not why we're here, but it is, we are using actual. And our actual is $10,000 after vacancy, higher than the assessors. But when you're stuck with the actuals, that's what you use. The only reason we're not 100% relying on it is because Prairie West Ice Cream is the owner. And so their rent was never really tested by the market. So that's the only uncertainty here. The non-recoverables are, again, we put in 5%, which are 44,000. And if you'll note the statement, the actual number is 53,298. So it was actually higher this year than 5%, and that's typical. Some years it'll be higher, some years it'll be lower, but you have to have an application of some number in there because that decreases what the owner takes home, which is the NOI. The shortfall, I was asking that question because this building happens to have a very high tax amount because it's newer. It's assessed at $8 a foot. And it gets the same shortfall rate as one that is assessed at $4 a foot. The major component of shortfall are taxes. The model does not have a method of changing the shortfall to match the assessment. And it's almost becomes a circular argument, but essentially you can't tell somebody your shortfall is only $385 when they go vacant and they know they're paying over $6 a foot to maintain that space. That's wrong. And so we've used the actual tax load and utilities, our estimates, which we don't disagree with the assessor on. They actually come from the business tax rolls. No disagreement with them there. And repair and maintenance, essentially, you have a vacant space. Some of your costs are higher, some are lower. Insurance is higher, security is higher, and wear and tear is lower. So the dollar is a fair number. So that's the two issues: non-recoverables, the shortfall, and the cap rate. We have a minor difference there. We agree that this is a good site for most things. I think the only thing that the two factors that are in my mind, and I haven't even read this here. Oh, okay. I probably disagree with some of this. I think that it's location deficient because to access it on Omens, you have to come off Brookside, which is still a ditch road that's asphalt surfaced and doesn't have great capacity for bearing weight, or you come up Logan, which is a cattle path with potholes everywhere where it's been ripped apart by semi-trailers. So that's its downside, that location. And the other factor is when you think of a cap rate, if you're getting a good rent, that means you don't have room to grow. There's nowhere to go. And this is at the top of the market. So an investor is not going to say, hey, I've got this upside down the road, I can raise my rents. So you put a bit of downward pressure on the cap. And that's just common sense. What we're seeing is finally people are understanding that concept in our crazy sales that we've been seeing lately, in that, you know, if you got an upside, you can have a low cap. There's no upside here. It's peaked. And it has had a vacancy issue over the years. So the 6.5 is fair. I know it's not much of a difference from what the assessor has, but we looked at this property not through a model, but our knowledge of it since how long have I been working on this? 2010. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Frolick, questions?
So, Mr. Neufeld, your reported net income is 784,588.
The NOI calculated, yeah.
Yep. And on page, do you have it on your brief?
That's in there somewhere.
What's the income on the bottom of page 3 for year-to-date actual?
As full is, what's that line item? 937 full.
So that's, we're looking at almost $150,000 difference.
No, we're looking at the difference between vacancy and shortfall being added to it.
No, but the point is net income's net income. At the end of
No,
the day,
no,
net
it
income with
isn't.
the property is a property. So
No,
if you
it
use,
isn't. No, it isn't. I'm not having this argument again. You can't
Well,
take a building that's full and then say, oh, well, it's the same as mine where I've discounted for vacancy already. That's not the same thing. You always have to add vacancy and shortfall on.
but a person would look, you would in an analysis, but the point is that you'd also look at the performance of the building. And if the performance of the building, you would use the net
Gentlemen,
income.
let's stick to the facts here and let's have questions and answers, please. Not formal discussions, please.
So can you explain the 100? So you're using your formula for net operating income and you're not using the actuals. Is that correct?
I'm not using your formula.
No, I'm saying
I'm using the appraisal formula. Everybody
Okay.
puts in an allowance for vacancy.
so. When you do a cap rate, don't you actually look at the actual income statement and the performance of the building?
No, you always apply you always apply the risk for the vacancy, always.
Yeah. But would the risk be that much? Would the risk be that much different than what you're seeing here of $150,000?
Well, it's the formula. I didn't hear. That's like you telling someone that your 912 is the same as 831. It's not. So my number of 937 is not the same as 784.
And no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens.
No, I think I followed what's happened here, so I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, I thank you. Mr. Mahone?
I do have a question with respect to your calculation, Mr. Neufeld, on page 1. You've got I'm just looking at your net income of 937,038 minus the vacancy subtotal, and then the non-recoverables of $44,275. That's your 5% allowance for non-recoverables as an amount to be deducted from the subtotal, the 85,501.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm looking at the non-recoverables there, and now I'm looking at page 3 on the income statement as well for the actuals, and the very last column, the very last row, series of rows, non-recoverable property expenses, and the $53,000 deducted from the total net operating income gives you the net income and loss of the 937. So aren't you double counting the non-recoverables there?
I think I'll confine the separate calculation here, but I don't believe so. But I certainly want to check this.
Please, I'm a little confused about this.
Okay. I hope we're right here.
You see where I'm looking, your total net operating income, and then under that, the non-recoverables.
Yes.
That amount does work out to just over 5%, 5.3%.
I would agree with you.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. That was all I wanted to know.
Yeah. So, Mr. Newfield, Would that change your NOI?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, that does change it, and I recalculated the numbers at my same cap. I just added the 53,000 back in, and I get 12,886,000.
12,886,000.
I'm hoping to get points here for honesty. I agree with you.
When I asked the question, there wasn't a lot of honesty being shared.
One question only, please.
Just an observation.
Well, I knew what they were asking. I think you were just guessing.
Well, no, well. Oh, wow. Ah, Mr. Neufeld, never a dull moment.
Mr. Frolick, do you have a question?
No, I'm okay. Well, the point is, it's, well, actually, I do have a question. So what was interesting is with what I came up with. So Mr. Neufeld, if we use the actual net income and a 6.5% cap rate, what was the value that you'd come up with?
I didn't. I put in the vacancy risk.
Okay.
It's that. I mean, it's.
I understand that. So, but that's where this is.
No,
why
I mean, it's not a relevant value.
Well,
it's not. We have a formula. Okay, everybody uses it.
But the point is, the formula is in our model generated income where we factored in vacancy. We came up with 13,311,000. I wasn't advocating for this, but if you used your 6.5% cap rate with an actual income, it worked out to $14.4 million.
Yeah, or we used it on your income and it works out less.
I understand that, but the point is, it's just our model value is less than the actuals because the actuals.
I'm not being rude here, but if you don't understand how this works, I can't have this debate with you. You're not willing to consider the system we have here. This is simple.
I have no other questions.
Nomination, either party?
I have nothing.
Just briefly, yes, I do agree, and I've given you my revised number. I see that was an error, and the whole concept of arguing about vacancy allocations is irrelevant. The assessor uses this model. We use pretty much the same numbers, except where we know they're wrong, and the market uses the same concept of adding a vacancy risk. So I think the fair number was the 12,886 that I suggested. Thank you.
All right. Let's go to the next property, which is 317 McDermott Avenue. Mr. Frolick, whenever you're ready.
File number is 22-2507. Roll numbers 13060989,000. We have assessed value of $1,654,000. Original building was built in 1903. The effective year built is between 1903 and 1909, but the property needs an inspection. There was a significant cut occurring in 2020. I had requested an inspection a couple of weeks ago, and just based on similar properties in the neighborhood, without having a full inspection of this, I could only speculate on what the entire building looks like, and you'll see this information in my brief. So on page 2, I'm showing some pictures of the property. It was actually an old MLCC warehouse, and it's on the historical building list of the city of Winnipeg, 317 McDermott. There's some additional pictures that are listed on here. It is located in downtown Exchange District. You can see clearly on the top of page 4 where it's located at, and there's some pictures that we have here on page 5 and then on page 6. So my question is, parts of this building is manufacturing, but the point is I don't believe the entire building's manufacturing. And unless I see the entire building, I can't really comment on what the building is or it's not, is when it's not. So we do have pictures on file showing, you know, some nice elevator space, and it's based on what I've been told, there's information out there that the first, third, and fourth floor may be office finish, and inspection is required. We do have pictures from Mr. Newfield's previous briefs showing us the warehousing space of it, but I don't know what the other space looks like. And if there's information out there that it may be office finish, that would derive a much higher rent. So on page 7 and 8, you can see some more of the warehousing space here. And here's just an overall view of what we have for the property. So the property is 112,410 square feet with a GPI of 281,005. Our blended rate's 2.5%, using 15% vacancy, which is a higher vacancy that we use for these old types of warehousing space in downtown Winnipeg. 3% expenses, 385 or shortfall. We come up with a operating income of 166,771. Using our 9.9% cap rate, we come up with a value of 1,654,000. What we have here is we have some comparable properties that are in the neighborhood, you know, that are on Bannatyne and Wellington and Adelaide and McDermott. They're all higher, you know, they are higher rents than what we have here today. And then here's some, and then what I have here on the bottom of page 10, I took an example of this because some of these buildings are really gems, but unless you actually go into them, inspect them, you really don't know how nice or what they actually look like. And so what I've done here is 70 Arthur is a very similar building to the subject property. And what I've done here is I've included some pictures of some spaces here of this type of building. Well, I don't know what it looks like in 317 McDermott, but I'm speculating if there's information out there that has told us that it's office finish, and office finish would derive a much higher rent. And so what I'm showing here on page 12 and 13 is what 70 Arthur sells rents for. So yes, it's a gross lease here in place, but it's $16. And so the income and expense mailers that we have here have not, you know, they show owner occupied, but I don't know what the quality of the finish is, and it's hard for me to speculate. On page 14, you know, I'm just showing some additional leases here that's taking place here that are all within that $16 gross range.
Yeah, but Mr. Frolick, if you've never seen the inside of the building, so why are you presenting information on these other ones that, you know, like, if you don't know, how can you compare?
Well, the point is, an inspection was required.
Oh, yeah.
And the point is, we have reason to believe that there is office finish.
Well, then you should have done an inspection.
Well, yes, I did request an inspection, and one was not, I was never responded to, which is why I'm asking for the value to be confirmed.
Yeah. Okay, but being speculative in regards to the value, I mean, you know, you have to know something about the product or the subject.
Well, the point is, I've been told that there is office finish on the
That's
higher
hearsay,
floors.
okay? That's hearsay, you know?
Well,
So-
a lot of the information that we have presented here today is also hearsay because it's not in the applicant's evidence, and we accept that.
After value, we're determining value.
Well, and so what I'm saying is with the information that I presented here, our rent is very, very low. And if it is office space, this property would be underassessed.
Okay. That's your presentation?
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Newfield, questions?
Yes, now, did you search any of the other databases in the city of Winnipeg for condition reports such as the Heritage and Conservation Department?
Well, I did look at because I used it as a part of my picture here. I did look at the fact that, you know, it is on the historical building site or whatever. It's just, I find it odd that if the building was strictly warehouse space.
That's the one written here, April 2016 on page 2.
Yep.
Did you read my report written at the same time? I had lots of pictures in it.
Oh, you know what? And in fairness, because I actually did read your report there, Mr.
To the,
Neufeld.
to the Historical Society.
Yeah, the Historical Society report, yes.
Okay, so
I
you
did go through it.
have some reports then.
Yeah, I did go through it, yes.
Okay. Just getting back now, in terms of the valuation, and this is page 9, is this what the model generates then?
That's what, this is based on the adjustments that we've made over the years with regards to what we've been told what the property looks like inside.
Oh, so some of this has been adjusted in the model? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because it's not as average, so I would have to double check, but the point is, yeah.
Well, now, when you look at the rent, this is a single user building, right? There's no, to your knowledge, there's no tenants in here, are there?
Well, the point is that we don't.
Just a question, are there any users in here other than the owner, to your knowledge?
It's a locked building, so I don't know the details of inside the building.
Okay, considering if it were the case, shouldn't you have used a rental rate on all 112,000 square feet rather than chopping it into 3 pieces? Because wouldn't that indicate a lower rent?
Well, our overall blended rent is very reasonable for what we have in the neighborhood.
Does the model size dependent rental rates?
So the model does factor in economies of scale. So if it's a single tenant building, then it would have a lower rent.
Okay. And now I know the model doesn't consider historical adjustments on the cap rate. Was this changed then manually for that? Do you know?
Well, the point is because it's an older building here, it's at one of the lowest cap rates that we have.
Okay, or highest, I mean.
Highest,
Right.
Yeah, highest,
And the 15% that's just the model for every loft warehouse gets that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And those are my questions. Thanks.
I thank you. Ms. Stevens, questions?
Sorry, so I'm just trying to clarify. Did you actually override any of these numbers, or this was fully modeled?
This was based on the past. So on past decisions that have taken place here. And so what has happened here, yeah, because our normal cap rate would have been 7.85% for this property. And we've changed it to 9.9.
So it was adjusted.
Yeah.
And with that adjustment, I think Mr. Neufeld asked this, but I'm not sure if I heard a direct answer. Would the historical designation have had anything to do with that 9.9%, or is it just the age of the building?
Well, just the age of the building. The age captures the higher cap rate. There's nothing that specific because, you would have to have a sample size of a significant amount to model that.
Okay. In your experience, if a building that is on the historical designation list was to go up for sale, would that designation have some impact on the sale?
Well, you always have to look at all aspects of the building. You can't just focus on one aspect of it. It's a part of the consideration. But the point is, if it's on the historical designation site, but if the building's in really, really good shape, it's up to speed with regards to HVAC systems and good windows and nice office finish, then that's just one component of a sale.
And your testimony today is that you're unaware of what kind of condition it's in.
Well, what I'm saying here right now is I've never inspected this property. I'd like to have the opportunity to inspect this property.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had. Thanks.
I thank you. Mr. Mahone?
I might just have a minute here. I'm looking at the income and expense mailers again. Just looking at the one at your page 19. for it's 2018 or the 12 months ending 2018. That appears to say it's owner occupied, but there is a rent amount ascribed to that, the 174,992. And that's exactly the same amount of rent from the income and expense mailer you have at page 18. And that income and expense mailer indicates it's partially owner occupied. So since 2018, at least, there's been an indication that it's partially owner occupied.
Yeah, that's what it says here. And what's also interesting about this property here, and I think they actually may be related companies, is because there's two different business assessment organizations that are listed in this building here. So with that being said, it's up to speculation. So it all comes back to the fact that, it'd be nice to do an inspection of this property so that we can find out,
Once you request an inspection, how long does it take to get it done?
Well, like in fairness, it's such a busy time of year, that it's not available. So like a part of my mindset is that last assessment, it was cut to almost the value, below the 2016 value. And it's based on information, and so it's based on Mr. Neufeld's presentation of what he has here. But unless we actually have an accurate sort of feeling for it, you know what I mean? Because if you have some of the areas looks can be deceiving. In my experiences with similar type properties like loft warehouses or OFD warehouses that end up taking place here, is that what ends up happening is just because it's an old building on the outskirts doesn't mean necessarily that it's really in rough shape on the other side of it. There's two businesses located here. There's Group 5 Leathers right now and Rishu Sportswear. I'm not too sure if they are related or not, but there are two business assessments in this building here right now, which would probably ask maybe partially your question, like which part is rented out and which isn't. I had a similar situation with a Palliser furniture property whereby they've only completed.
Sorry, I'm going to skip to something else now.
Yeah, no problem.
Permits or anything else taken out, or any history of that you're aware of?
Any permits? No, because our most recent permit is with regards to, there was I would just have to double check here. There was a permit taken out in 2016, but no major infrastructure permits that have been taken out for this property.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't have anything further. I have no questions. Mr. Neufeld, your presentation.
Thank you. So the building, you probably got the idea from, I know quite well, in 2016, the Heritage Department decided to nominate it to go on the list. And it's a process that takes you through all four of the committees. And I hear in front of every single one of them, including City Council at the end, to voice the opposition to putting it on the heritage designation. And the reason is that once it's done, elements on it are frozen and there's nothing you can do with the building. And I'll try to go through my report in order, but that's the outline of it. We used a rent of $1.90, and later on I'll show you the rents they came from. It's just a mathematical number that came up after inputting a bunch of rents on. We used 115,000 square feet, and that's the gross building size. I imagine the 112 represents removing some common area. This number was pulled from the original gross building area. This isn't major. Vacancy, we stuck with our beliefs on the most accurate report, which is the Johnson report, and it indicates industrial 6.2, city average, and central 11.3%, which we applied at 8.75, much lower number than what the assessor has. We do have higher non-recoverables on this building. We're using 5%, and that is probably the worst underestimation of non-recoverables. A building like this is extremely expensive to maintain because it's just old and it has problems, and I'll show you a couple as we go through. Same with the shortfall. The shortfall is based on a very high repair and maintenance allocation of $2 a foot, which is now something that we're personally aware of, and should there be a concern about whether or not that's right or not, they do file their income and expense statements, and I'm looking at 290,000 in expenses that they're running every year. So it's a they're reporting it, but the city doesn't use it, and that's life. And capped at 12.25%. The cap rate, page 2, is number one issue is heritage, because the stuff is frozen. There's nothing you can do with the site. If you wanted to do some renovations on it, you're restricted. I'll show you what those are later. Sorry, my machine is just shutting off. It's making a noise. The freezing is in many ways, and one of the freezings is the fire safety, believe it or not, is one of the protected elements. And if you're renting today to any large company, they will require ISO 9001 certification, which is fire rated exits. This doesn't have it. And you can't modify it. You can't put something in it that you'd like to put in it. You've got to stay with what's frozen. So it's limits the usage. Location, of course, downtown. Access, it's 0 lot, so there's no room for loading. Used to be every downtown lot they allowed the truck parking on the street. That's all gone. And some of them had back lanes. There's nothing there. No parking outside anyway. Building size for the neighborhood, it's way too large. Design and layout, multi-story. Industrial multi-story is bad. Now, the floor loading on it is great for its age. They built them in the old days with 2x8s on end, so it was good floor loading. But in today's day and age, for pallet loading, that doesn't work because you're going to have pallet piles that you have to be focused on. So there would be some bracing required, and the 2x8 wood, it doesn't hit the standard of, I think it's trying to remember what it was. I just had this, went through this issue. 1,000 pounds a square foot is now the requirement. It doesn't meet it. You're built at, of course, it's a 0. Now, it's not all built in 1904. The addition was built in 1954. Quality, 0. I've been in it numerous times. 0. There's pictures. It's clear. Condition, it's working. So 2 out of 10. So it comes to 12.24%. The front of it says Toronto Police Station. I'm on page 2. That was for a movie shoot that happened on it, and the owner decided he liked the look of it, and he left it up. Exterior shots only. The rents I spoke of are, there are most of the ones on page 3 are they're all better, I should say. It's the bottom of page 4 where we looked at the loft buildings. So these are all downtown locations. There really isn't anything of its size, and you can see they range from as low as 50 cents to as high as, I'm just looking for a net rent here. SG means semi-gross. So the highest here, actual net rent is $250 a square foot for small space, 6,000 square feet. And from this, we derived the 190. The vacancy schedule, page 5 and page 6 there've been, I think, 3 reports done for Heritage. This is the one from 2004 when it was put on the nomination amount, and not the conservation, but I guess nomination at that time. But everything changed, and built as a warehouse. Now this is the funny part, page 7. And I'm not very tactful, and I was I was presenting this to city council, and this is the attached parkade built in 1954. It is protected by heritage, and I asked if that was because we wanted a monument to Soviet era construction from the Cold War in Winnipeg, because that's what it looks like. It's just a big hunk of cement. It's there's parking levels in there, and there's also warehouse storage in there, but it's just poured cement from 1954. I can't believe we preserved that. Now, inside the building, at the bottom of page 7, and there's your typical inside. You can see the flooring, the wood on. Actually, this one's got some strip laid on top of the 2x8s on end for a floor finish. So this is what the assessor refers to as the quality office. Page 8 is your typical stairwell. And this is the absolute worst thing on page 8, the bottom, the elevator. Now, I don't know if it shows up on here. There are, one of the protected elements are fire doors. They use the old system of lead, melted lead in between two pieces of steel. And when the temperature gets to a certain point, the lead melts and then the cables release and the fire doors close. That is protected by heritage, not something modern, but something antiquated. Now, the problem there becomes is who's around that can still service this, but yet it's being protected. It must stay. Well, nobody is going to rent something like this. And that's just one of the difficulties I'm saying about fire protection. It doesn't meet any modern standard, but it's protected. Just an irony. We're protecting it and we're keeping our value low. Page 9 is more of the interior space. This is the typical finish. Now, I will tell you that there is a small meeting room on the second floor I've been in, and it's got shag carpet, 1960s vintage shag. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what I said about the fire door? There it is on page 10. That's the picture I was looking for. You see the pulley system with the weights and the link. When the heat is a certain amount, then everything gets released and the fire doors get shut. That's the protected. Beside it is the 12x12 timbers for which form the posts. And that's the problem with the building. So it is owner occupied. It's Richelieu. They were in the 30s. They were one of the biggest garment manufacturers. All the garment manufacturing has gone offshore. They do some specialty work here. A lot of their leather work is done here. The embroidering and final assembly. So I think if you watch the Jets games and you see the Jets being given their leather coats, that's what sort of work they do in here now. But the floors are, there's only, last time I was in, which was 3 years ago, there were only 2 in use. And that brings me to my other heritage problem. And if you look at page 2, the windows, every window on this building is protected by heritage. These are single frame steel pane windows with arches. So they cannot be replaced with a modern insulated. You have to replace them, rebuild them with a steel frame window. Now, we never checked to see if we could get double panes in there, but the problem is the custom-made windows are running about $4,000 a window, and it's not economical. So when a window breaks, what the owner does is he puts plywood in, because he's not allowed to fix it with anything modern. And that therein lies the decommissioning of the floors. So now if you're looking at the front picture, you can see 1 and 2 are in use, 3, 4, and 5 are boarded up. Now it's still viable for dead storage, but I mean, how much more dead storage do they need? Because they got another 180,000 feet in Gomez and another 200,000 feet on Inkster, and for a market that's diminishing. So all in all, I think that this is about the best we could estimate. If the property was offered for sale, I mean, that's how these buildings transact. And the number we have is pretty clean. It's $10 a foot. And that's what these buildings would transact at. I mean, they've seen them as low as 8, seen them as high as 20. The size of it would indicate that 10 is a fair number. That's my presentation.
I thank you. Mr. Frolick?
So do you know anything about the tenant at Group 5 Leathers?
They're all owners.
They're owners as well?
It's all the same, it's just a separate division of the same company.
Okay. And so in your pictures here, you said there's limited space on the second floor for office?
I said that there's a meeting room on the second floor and I've been in it.
Okay. And so, but how about the first floor? Is the first floor all manufacturing or is it all?
The second floor, when you go up, it's got space on the west side. There's not a hallway. It's not a central hallway, but it's offset. So you're looking at a picture of it on page 1, and you see the car parked diagonally. From that going north about 30-40 feet, there is the administration offices, and it's a width of about I would say 18 feet wide, so maybe 18 by about 30 or 40.
And I got the and on page 6 of my brief, what floor is the foyer where outside the elevators?
Yeah, that's the second floor.
That's the second floor?
Yeah.
Okay. And on the third and fourth floor,
it's sewing rooms, a giant sewing floor.
Okay. How many people are currently employed there?
Last time I checked, there were about 27. Yeah, somewhere around that. Testing my memory, I didn't write it down anywhere. It was about that amount. You'll see on, like, for example, your picture on page 7 is there is one sewing station visible, right? But they're in the background. You can see that there's I guess about 4 sewing stations. So that's all that's really left is a minimum sewing stations.
And what floor is on page 7?
I don't know. I don't recall.
No other questions. Thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Stevens?
I have no questions. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Mahone?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Summation, either party?
No, thank you.
I just think that it's great that Mr. Rich is wasting all his money and keeping this building for the heritage of Winnipeg, and it forcibly or not, but that doesn't indicate its value. It's unfortunate. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take about a 10-minute break. So we'll reconvene at 2:52. All right, so we'll call a hearing back to order, and we're going to go to 15 Bury Street. Mr. Frolick, whenever you're ready, you can take us to this property.
Yeah, mute.
Oh.
The default position is, I understand. It's just, I hear you, but you can't hear me. I'd like to make a recommendation on this property. There's 2 adjacent parcels of land to the west of this property. And so my new value will be, I'll just enter in the file number, the roll number. It's 22-3292, and it's roll number 130925-00000. My recommended value is $4,907,000. And that's taking out there's 2 parcels of land that are right across that are used for parking for the subject property. They've been in appeal prior to the prep work for this hearing, and subsequently that my new value is $4,907,000.
Mr. Neufeld?
Well, I appreciate the gesture, but there's other problems. Thanks. We'll carry on.
All right. Mr. Frolick, floor is yours.
Yep, the property has a series of buildings built between 1906 and 1989. The wall heights between 16 and 22 feet high. We have a land area of 134,428. We have a leasable area of 87,451. Looking at the page below, property owner has been compliant with regards to completing income and expense mailers. Property is located west of McPhillips in the Brooklands area. And it's just, if I just double check, it's south of this, the CP track lines. As you can see by the west, where the western shots are on the bottom of page 3. I have not inspected this property, but despite its location and its appearance, there's a picture that we had on file on page 4 that shows that actually the quality of the space on page 4 is actually quite nice and quite reasonable. And so when we're looking at the infrastructure here, this is something that we have online. So it does seem to be like a nice building, and even though it's aged, its effective age is it's reflected probably in the rent. Page 5, you got some overhead pictures of it. That when we're looking at this building, it's not like a true warehouse building with a single roof, which is 30 feet. When I've gone through this, because there's actually 8 different buildings here, all the wall heights are between 16 and 22 feet. And like the very first building was built in 1906, which was 12,200 square feet. And the very last building was in 1989, which was 18 feet, which is only 1,740 square feet. So with that being said, we have all the different leasable areas that are listed there for the different standardized spaces that we have here. Our total area is 87,451. The total GPI is 532,311, which works out to $6.08. And then looking at the pictures on page 4, it doesn't seem to be that unreasonable of a rent that we have here. With that being said, we have a vacancy of 6.5%, expenses at 3%, shortfall of 385 to come up with a net operating income of 460,895. Using an 8.85% cap rate, we come up with a value. Our initial value was 5.208, but I reduced that to 4,907 based on the adjacent land that we have there. Looking at some comparable rents in the neighborhood, these are all located within the inner city. You know, the sizes are varied. So we got sizes that are from 3,550 to like 67,767 square feet. All the leases are pretty new and up to date. Wall heights are similar to 14 to 17 for the majority of them. The one that we do have higher is at 30 feet, and that is a newer building here at 549. We have our standardized cap rate in the back. And with regards to the income and expense mailer here, what they have reported here, and we haven't captured this either, is they're showing a net operating income of 375,875. They're actually showing some towers or an antenna of 13,340. And then looking at the mailers that they have here, they have two properties here, 2 tenants. One of them is mortar manufacturing, the other one's Valley Powder Coating. I have not inspected this property. And when I look at this here, I'm not too sure which one's owner occupied or if they're fully leasing out this space. That concludes my formal presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld.
Was this page 6 done by the model?
Page 6 was done by the model, correct?
And there are 2 tenants in here, correct?
Pardon me? 2 tenants. Yeah.
Why do you have 6 spaces?
Well, because there's 8 different buildings here. And we don't know and so when it comes to this property here right now, we don't know where the different spaces are located and what buildings they're located at.
Aren't all these buildings attached?
They are attached. They are attached, yes.
Okay, so there is one building with 8 sections. Isn't that a fair way to say it?
But they were built over, a time period of over 70 years.
Well, most of these buildings don't even have access to the outside, so they would be part of the exterior building, would they not?
I've never inspected this property, so I don't know all the ins and outs of it.
Getting back to my question on page 6, shouldn't there just be 2 premise IDs?
Buildings change. And so, when the new inspections occur and they don't occur and we have a better understanding of where the tenants are located at, then it would have 2 PIDs. But the point is, it's just that buildings change on many different occasions here. So what happens is tenants move and go. This would be a never-ending story for us to be up to date because the core building in this situation is 86,000 square feet. But if different tenants come back and forth, it's just like industrial strip malls. Sometimes there are 4 tenants in them. Sometimes there are only 2 tenants. Sometimes there are 8 tenants. It all depends on the economic conditions of the time.
Are these 6 sections all self-contained with their own exits and entrances?
I've never inspected this property, so I can't comment on that.
Okay. And in the case of the vacancy, is this something that's generated by the location, or is there anything special going on here?
There's nothing to my knowledge that there's special going on, and this is a model generated vacancy.
A capitalization rate by the model as well?
That seems to be correct, yes.
Why didn't you adjust it by the amount that the municipal board suggested?
Was there a recent municipal board decision on this property?
There was a municipal board decision on this property.
Was there a recent municipal board decision on this property?
I don't know your terminology for recent. There is a decision. I just asked if you had considered it, and you're answering me with a question, yes or no.
Well, the point is that we look at reasonable, recent municipal board decisions that occur. Okay, when something's 20 years away from the reference date, then we don't look at rental rates and cap rates from 20 years ago. We look at up-to-date information.
Does contamination go away?
Contamination, unless there's remediation, it does not go away.
Does it go away? No? Okay. Now, your comps, did you select these?
Yes, they're from our income and expense mailer process. It's what we collect. Yeah, we collect comps.
There's no 1909 buildings, are there? 1906 buildings, I should say.
No, not usually, but the effective age of this building would be closer to the 1950s or 60s. I'd have to double check.
What was the number that you, and I'm just asking because we didn't have a chance to change our own, the 2 parking lots, what was the total?
The total was 300,700.
300,700. Okay. Did you have a chance? Now you briefly discussed pages 10 and 11. You didn't do the math calculation on this, how much they're actually declaring that they're earning?
Well, I'm not too sure. Well, I did not do the calculations for that. No, I did not.
Okay, those are my questions then.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens?
Yeah, I just, your recommendation, I'm just trying to figure out, so if I'm on your page 6, you have additional land value at 0. But and you're at 5,208,000 with it at 0. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what you did to get down to your recommended number here.
Well, you can't see it, but Mr. Neufeld's aware of it. On the other side of Brewery Street, there's 2 vacant parcels of land there that are part of the economic unit of the building here. That's owned by the building owners. And those assessed values were $135,700 and $165,000. So what I did is I took the values of those 2 properties off of the assessed value that we had.
Okay, and why did you do that?
Because they're parking used by the business, by the
So
owner.
you weren't taking them as an additional land value because they are being used, is that?
Well, yeah, well, the point is it's similar to when we have car dealerships. Sometimes land to building ratios are quite low for car dealerships. What we'll do is if there's adjacent parcel of land that's right beside a car dealership, we would deduct the value of that land from the car dealership. And so in this situation here, we've deducted the value of the land from the building.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to, because you didn't have anything listed for additional land in your original workup. So I was.
Well,
just
because
trying-
it's not, yeah, it's not listed there. It's
Okay, so
adjacent to the subject property.
Okay, so after a conversation with the applicant, you decided to remove that value out of the original workup. Okay, I think I got it. That's all I had. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Mr. Mahone?
No, I think, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
I don't either. So, Mr. Newfield, your presentation?
Thank you. So the site is a rambling old collection of older buildings. It was part of the original, I think, Weston Yards, and rail related, and additions were made. And I don't believe it has anything to do with the rail yards at this point any longer. There are 2 tenants in it, and the assessor has brought forward that information. We had a difficult time reading this, and I really wasn't sure how we'd want to present this information because, and I'm just going to refer to the assessor's brief, and we had this information as well, showing 375,000 in income. Instead of cellular towers on the other lot, it's not on the subject lot. But what was confusing here were the recoveries, because it appears these are semi-gross leases. So when you look at the assessor's page 11, there are 2 monthly rents, 24,291 and 59,12. If you take those and multiply them by 12 and assume they're net, you get 362,436. We're using 361, 365. I don't know what the difference, the $200, $100 difference is. It might just be a rounding, but that's what we ended up using. I don't think that these are net leases, but we couldn't clarify this with the owner, and certainly don't like presenting misinformation. Vacancy, we did the same thing we did before. Turns out the West End's got a better vacancy rate because there's a lot of owner occupants users, and so 4.45 is what it was. The non-recoverables, our allowance of 5%, and in this case, I think we're beyond reproach on those non-recoverables, because if you look at the mailer, that there's a few $100,000 of them. So rather than try to rate them all and say which are good and which are bad, we just put in 5%. Our shortfall is calculated just like everything we do, is we look at the tax load, the utility load, and an R&M allowance. So it is higher than what the assessor uses, but again, it's a shortfall is not a fixed number that everybody gets. A shortfall relates to the cost of the building. So that's sometimes the utilities are higher, sometimes repair and maintenance are higher, sometimes taxes are higher, and you can certainly see that they have no shortage of expenses that they'd have to carry as empty. The mistake that was made here was the person who made this up had the faintest idea about the environmental issues. There is an actual board order which I've sent as rebuttal. I asked the assessor a question, so I had the opportunity to lead this as rebuttal. There was a board order, and it basically infers that this is a chronic contamination issue, and the board adjusted the cap rate by 2 percentage points. This is this style of application for contamination was true. It was more common 20 years ago to see this, and the sophistication of dealing with contaminated properties is not the same as today. But this is 1906, so how do they say this? There are probably lots of environmental skeletons on the site that one never knows. Personally, I would not cap this that low. I'm not going to make another change. We'll let it stand as is, and say that this does represent a very liberal high value to what the actuals are. Regardless, the parking lots, I'm not sure if the assessor has the right number, because they were heard. I'm just double checking that. I think it's slightly different than this. It might actually be lower. No, he's right. 300,700. So our value increases by 120,000 because the board already cut it. So our value is not 325,700. It's 337,300. What did I say? 333. It's 120 less. 3,137,300. 3,137,300. Because they had taken off the parking lots. You'll note that there is no parking on the subject land, so they do need those lots for parking. So
what's the number, Mr. Neufeld?
Okay, I had to get a calculator out here. It's 3,678 minus 300, 700.
3,377,000.
You got it. 3,377, 300. Sorry about that. Okay, I went the wrong way.
Well, you went lower, so that's what I was sort of.
Yeah, well, I was just, really focusing on that contamination issue. And that's, so I said the rents, I believe, are actually lower than this. And I think we could live with what was put here. It's not the right market value, but sometimes you don't always get market value. And as far as the previous year's assessments, we have nothing to do with these. So I don't know what the story is. This is a new client for us. We're taking a fresh look. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Frolick, questions?
Yes. Is this property still fully occupied?
That I don't know, because I see from the statement that one of these leases expired July 31st, 2020. So I haven't updated the occupancies.
Okay. And the reason why I asked this is because on our mailer, and with regards to the owner occupied portion, like so none of it's owner occupied, because
it's my understanding it's not, that it was at one point and now it's investment.
okay. Well, the thing is, it's just with regards to the property tax recoveries, they only got $35,000 in recoveries, but the actuals are closer to $100,000. So I'm just wondering if you know anything about that at all.
Well, what I mean, I'm just making the assumption that it's a semi-gross lease, probably a base year maybe, or something like that, and they're not getting full recoveries. So that's why I said the net income would be lower.
And so in terms of the shortfall that you're using here, do you know what the actual shortfall is for the building per se? Like,
Well-
on any sort of, any sort of recent listings or anything like that that have taken place?
I'm just looking at the op costs, and to me, it looks like a ballpark 360,000 in operating costs in rough numbers, and that puts it at about 414 a foot. And see, we're at 460. But and I haven't included any management or fee, professional or insurance. Oh, yeah, I have to add insurance into that. So no, I think our number's about dead on. I see it
Yeah,
now.
but on the mailer, they're reporting insurance, they're reporting management and administration.
Right, but you got to pay all those costs, right? So you have to pay 26 professional fees might be high that year. Still got to pay their accountant 36, 42, 130, 170, 190, 230, 230, 345, plus some maintenance. Yeah, I think we're comfortably comfortably at about $400,000, which is 460 a foot. So I think our guys did it right.
Okay, so looking at the quality of the finish on page 4, you think that's a $4.18 rent, or do you think that the rent should be higher based on the condition of the building and the cleanliness and the organization of it?
Well, what I see is I'm looking at the industrial portion because that's the part that earns money. And I see a lower ceiling. I see cores that are fairly close together. I can't see the quality of the cement. I see some overhead cranes on some scale on additional framework, which tells me that the roof loading is fairly low. I see working space, not warehouse distribution. I would have liked to think this portion is good, but then when I go and look at the overhead pictures, for example, and then you look at the different sections of it, and you see I'm just going to point out your page 5, the buildings in the lower left corner. I mean, these things are old. This isn't all the space that's that good. So I just see a working warehouse.
But a building with floor heights between 16 to 18 feet, like this this will never be a warehousing facility. This would be a manufacturing plant in a perfect.
That's what I'm saying. If you're 16 to 20 external, then if you look at the pictures you're showing on page 4, take a look at the beams and how far down they go. The clear height is very bad. Probably some of these pictures, it looks to be about 12 feet in that ballpark. That's not good. You want a clear height. Bottom right appears to be about 16 feet. That's the key. So that's bad clear height.
No other questions.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens?
Yeah, just, you may have said this and I may have missed it, but you were talking about contamination in relation to the cap, et cetera. So what exactly is the issue with this building?
I did no research other than what I emailed in for rebuttal. I knew that this was a case that for years was being used as case law for contamination. This was the key case. And they never spoke to it. I'm just seeing if it's in here. Oh, well, I can go ask my neighbor here, Jim Kulik. I'll see if he's still in. He'll tell me. Yeah, in the rebuttal, page 9, pits were filled with hazardous material, and they removed some soil that had absorbed it, but that was only in one section. So that's all they would provide.
Okay, and can I just get you to your revised number again? I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, 3337300.
And did you have a new NOI there?
No. It was just a change in the lots.
All right. Okay. All right.
That's a
Okay.
major-
That's all I had. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I have some questions with respect to the rent that you've arrived at, the $4.18 per square foot. I'm looking at page 4 in your brief. You've got the industrial rental rates chart and then the per square foot by by size, the graph below with those plotted points. Those plotted points are the amounts as they appear in the chart above.
That's correct.
In the chart above, and all those industrial rental rates are similar kinds of premises. As this one is characterized, that industrial warehousing.
Well, I'm going to say that there's some that are most of these are a bit better. I'm just trying to pick out ones that are the most similar. 2049 Googled is close. 1450. Oh no, they renovated that. 1245 Border was similar, except yeah, it was close to it. It's a bit better because they just finished taking out the rail spur in it. 225 McPhillips, it's an older one, but that's not too bad of a choice. 770 Pandora is a good fit for it because that's an old furniture warehouse that was demised and kind of the space needed to be changed up. Oh, 1500 Notre Dame, that one hits it on the head. I've been in there. I was involved with that deal. It's just yeah, that would be the best comp right there. 1500 Notre Dame. 1835 Sargent is a similar building. The 630 Kernahans, there's a couple in there. They demised it. And that's a similar property. 680 Mission, 680 Mission is another rambling style development where there's 6 or 7 buildings that they kept adding on. They originally made plastics in there, so that would be similar. And the last one, 1093 Sherwin, is a plastics manufacturer. Manufacturing is what I'm focusing on here. Those are the ones I would be thinking about.
Okay, I looked through that chart and the plotted points, and I don't see any of the comps as used by the city assessment and taxation department, which appear at page. Just a moment here. At page 7 of their brief, none of those properties as used as rent comparables appear on your plotted graph. Is that correct?
Yeah, these are their comps and the way they collect them. And if we find one that's accurate, we use it. Now, for example, in my graph where you see COW,
Yes,
those were rents that originally came from the assessor, and we had our own knowledge of them and we were able to verify them. I think the problem with the assessor's rents is that this type of building, as the subject is, it tends to be a semi-gross style of rent, and in this neighborhood of Wall and Erin and Clifton, it's generally what you would see. So until we saw the financials, we couldn't, we wouldn't want to rely on it.
But with regards to a comment that Mr. Newfield's made, when Mr. Newfield puts these City of Winnipeg rents, they're like 6 years away from the reference date. Market rents have gone up, so it's old data, which is not reflective of current market conditions. And so I just want to be, because I'm mindful of these rents that are set as City of Winnipeg rents, and they are higher than what's been stated in Mr. Newfield's brief. If I actually brought out the mailers, because in some situations where there has been rebuttal, that I've come across these leases and they have been higher.
Thank you. I don't have anything further.
I thank you. Mr. Newfield, there's a slight error in your square footage. Just
Let me just see this. So
Okay.
86,451. 86,451, and what the assessor is 87,451 on the,
yeah.
see that. Yeah, you know, in this case, I don't think there's a reason to change anything, because remember I said earlier, I thought we were $100 off from the paid rent, and I hadn't read ahead. We didn't even use the paid rent. We didn't have it. So the person who did this ran the graph to find out it was $100 different than paid rent. Means it's really good. No reason to change anything.
All right, let's change. Let's go to your rebuttal. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, it's just it just gives page 9 gives a description of the condition and the environmental issues, and oh, here we go. The building was a foundry. That's what it was. The contamination. So we don't know what metals were used, and you know, so that's that doesn't change. So they said soil was removed in the front of the building, but not the building itself. The board, after listening to all of this on the subject, made the final determination that where page 12. It appears appropriate to adjust the capitalization rate to take into account the fact that the property was contaminated and may continue to be contaminated. And this has been resulted in a stigma being attached to the property, resulting in difficulties in obtaining financing and in disposing the property. None of that has changed. So in this case, it was a 2 percentage point difference that the board decided specifically for this property after reviewing the evidence.
Mr. Pollock, questions?
Mr. Neufeld, what's our cap rate for this property?
Well, you're asking me about my evidence or your evidence?
Well, our cap rate's higher than yours, so would you not say that there's been adjustment made for that with regards to
No,
the point that you're making out?
you weren't listening to the whole presentation. I said that this is an error, and if I had redid it, I would have gone with a higher cap rate. I would have looked this over more. I didn't do this. You know, there's a certain amount of time as we're all under the same pressures to get these reports in, and you know, honestly, if we had adjusted it for the actual rent and a higher cap, the value, you might owe the owner money. So a reasonable number to settle on is 3.3 million.
Okay, and so when you mentioned no other questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens, any questions in regards to the rebuttal?
No, I have no questions on the rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mahone?
Just one, having quickly gone over the rebuttal evidence, the remediation appeared to be in progress when this hearing took place, or at least the evidence indicated that. Has the remediation been completed, or can you tell us when it was completed?
far as, no, what page are we referring to? Because I saw remediation of some soil replacement. Is that what you meant?
I was looking, let me get back to it. Yeah, the heavy metal, I'm looking at page 10, the heavy metals contaminated all three portions. They're being pumped out. His understanding is that the present situation is stable and that the present uses may be continued on the site. There would be risk associated with any future costs arise from remediation orders. Like all of this is 20 years ago. Have any of these, has this remediation continued or has it stopped?
Well, okay, so it said chromium is being pumped out, but then it says the present uses may be continued on the site. Chromium's half-life, I don't know what it is off the top of my head. It doesn't go away. So pumped out of the pits, but it seeped into the ground. I've worked with a couple of buildings that have had chromium contamination, and I hadn't read this until you just pointed it out to me. So I think the last one I worked with Environment had put it at 90 years. I think it was. It doesn't go. You got to take out. It's in a pit, so that means you'd have to excavate the entire pit, remove the concrete, test and remove the soil under it and take it out. That has not been done. It says it's been pumped out.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Summation, either party? You okay?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, let's go to 90 Larson Crescent, Lawson. Mr. Frolick, whenever you're ready.
File number is 22939. Roll number is 1000139 6800. Assessed value that we have for this property is $2,065,000. Was built in 1999. Wall heights between 10 and 21 feet. Land area is 137,412. Leasable area is 13,800. And the land to building ratio is 11.85. Property owner has been compliant with regards to completing the income and expense mailers. And what we have here is on the bottom of page 2. What you'll end up seeing here is you'll see the office space. You have 2 floors of office space here. I've never been inside this building, but based on our records, and there's 11,600 square feet of office space here. Page 3 and 4 have some additional pictures of where it's located at in the southwest quadrant. And as you can see on the bottom of page 4, just the location of where the building is. And how it, just the layout of it. What we have here in terms of space, we have a leasable area of 13,800. We have 3 different pits here. And so what we end up having is 125. I did not write this down. 125, 546. 0. Our blended rate for this property is $9.09. Using a 3.5% cap rate, 3% expenses. We come up with a net operating income of $115,657. Using a cap rate of 5.6, we come up with a market value of $2,065,000. So what we have here is we have a series of rents that are all in the Fort Garry Industrial Park area on page 6 in terms of comparables. So, the ranges are that we have here. We have ranges that are from 1771 all the way to 13,138. We're showing, they're all built. They're older than the subject property, between 1968 to 1999, and we're showing rents here that are between $8.28 and $12. A lot of these are office finishes, and so you do need to be reflective of the higher quality finish for the office space that's located here, and it's much higher than a $6 rent. What we also have here is we got some additional rents here that are on page 7, and here are a group of rents that are on page on the bottom of page 7. These are OFS rents that are not industrial per se, but this is what the office rents are going for in the neighborhood. So just to be reflective, over $9 is quite fair for this portion of the building. Once again, here's the City of Winnipeg cap rate on page 8. And property, here's the income expense mailer on page 10. There's information listed here that it is a net rent, but a lot of information is not completed here. It's very basic and not enough to move it going forward. And even if you see here, it's on page 12, it's been an open lease here since 1999. So that would indicate to me that it's an owner-occupied property. That concludes my formal presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Newfield, questions?
Yeah, page 5, was this done by the model?
Yes, it was.
Is this a storage warehouse?
Well, the point is that it's listed as a storage warehouse from our perspective, but there's a significant portion that is office finish.
Aside from the office area, what is the rest of the building being used for? Do you know?
I've never inspected it, but if it's Wallace and Wallace, is it not roofing and fencing?
You don't know then.
I've never inspected this property, so I don't know what they do there.
And what would the mean rent be then?
The mean rent based on the OFSs that we have here? Well, we have the medium rent at $15.95.
No, what's the average rent?
The average rent for the property we have is at $909.
$909, okay. And the cap rate from the model is based on which factors?
Comparable sales of properties that have taken place prior to the April 1st, 2020 reference date.
No, that's the source material. Which factors do you use? We're looking at age.
We're using at the performance of actual buildings. We're looking at what they've sold for. We look at the net income that's generated, and then we'll develop a cap rate from that.
What inputs are used to extract a cap rate from your model?
Well, we derive a net operating income using market rents, factoring in vacancy, factoring expenses. You know, then we compare that to the sale price.
Is location a factor?
Location is a factor.
Is age a factor?
Age is a factor.
Is wall height a factor?
Wall height's a factor.
Is type of construction a factor?
Everything's a factor, Mr. Neufeld. We look at the variety of, because what will end up taking place if it's a newer building in a good location, for example, the cap rate in the southwest quadrant will be significantly lower than something than our previous property at 15 Bury.
Do you know on your page 6 what each of these people do in their spaces?
Well, there's a variety of businesses.
1470 Wilson, what's in there?
It's a health company.
Health meaning what? They do medical work or doctor's office? What?
Well, it's a tenant that we have listed here that pay $12 net a square foot.
Okay, so you don't know what the actual usage is, that's all?
That's what I have in front of me.
What about the next one, 130 Wilson?
It's a brewery.
Brewery, no, I'm looking at the rental for it. The brewery is 32,000 square feet.
Well, yeah, so what ends up happening here is this portion of it that we have here is there's also other businesses that are located at 130 Lawson, and this is the reported rent that they have here for the 2494 square feet.
I'm looking at the rent roll of Fort Garry Breweries, 32,000 feet, commercial pools, 7,100 feet.
Is there only one business located at 130 Lawson, Mr.
I'm reading,
Neufeld?
I'm reading them. Cork, 11,900 feet. I don't see
If we're
any.
looking at the BA for this property, Mr. Neufeld,
You know what it is.
well, is it not a multi-tenanted property?
It's your evidence, not mine.
Well, I answered the question and you're not listening.
Okay, you're not, are you disagreeing with me that there is no tenant in there at 2,400 feet?
I would have to double check. Sorry for the delay. That seems odd, Mr. Yeah, there's a mistake here, and I do, and I'm looking at the mailer here, and there's conflicting information there. I don't have a lease in place for 2494 in this space.
Okay.
That is April 1st, 2020 for 10 years.
All right. Now of the oh, I just closed the wrong file here. Of these comparables, are any of them manufacturers?
Any of the manufacturers? No, because what we've done here is none of them are manufacturing.
Okay.
But the point is that the majority of this building here is office space. It's not manufacturing.
That is your testimony. You believe that?
Well, what we have, based on your evidence, you're showing 1,100 and 600 square feet of office space.
Your evidence is, what is your evidence?
We're showing rents of an overall blended rate of $9 based on 13,000 square feet building.
Yeah, and you're saying it's predominantly office. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we have 3 PIDs here. One of them is 9,000, one of them is 2,200, another one's 2,600 square feet. So if we're looking at, I've never inspected this property, so I don't know the details of it, but the point is the cover page that I presented here shows a very nice office space.
Your picture, page 4, top picture.
Yes.
On the right-hand side is the office section, correct?
Yep.
The larger building in them is got bays in it?
Yep.
Not office space, is it?
No, it's not.
The biggest part of the building is not office. Would you?
No, it's not office, but the overall rents that we're using here is reasonable for the type of space that it has.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens?
Yeah, so in a similar vein, I'm just trying to, if I go to your work up here, I noticed, I know you've got 3 different areas of the building, but, and the average is 909, but the rents are not all that far apart. Would you normally, for warehouse space, have the same general rent as you would for office?
Well, what we have here is these are storage warehouse of this size. So what will end up happening here, because we've talked about economies of scale, and what has happened usually, smaller spaces derive a higher market rent, and the rents that we're using here are reflective of the higher market rent.
Okay, but I'm like, when I look at the pictures, it looks like there's quite a large amount of storage there. I'm just sorry, I just scrolled the wrong way here.
Yep.
So like if you, at the top of page 4, that it looks like that's a fair amount of storage there, but I'm trying to figure out how that breaks down in the breakdown that you have. Now, I understand you haven't, inspected the building, but.
Well, so when we're looking at this building here, and then this way, see, a lot of the information that I have here is derived on previous information. I'm looking at Mr. Neufeld's appeal in 2020, and he's made the same conclusion. So he has shown 11,600 square feet of office space here. Office space derives a higher market rent than the shop space. So in that regards, because Mr. Neufeld's been here on many occasions, I have not. So I'm basing it on what Mr. Neufeld has shown in on his appeals on November 6th in 2019, and what he's done here today. So he's showing this. I haven't inspected this property.
No, I understand that.
And so what ends up happening is, based on the history that he's provided us, I'm assuming that it's office space. But with that being said here, the $9 doesn't seem to be that unreasonable for what we have here for space.
Okay, just as a point, that when I look at the breakdown of the square footage in the building, and I look at the rental rates, it doesn't line up with what you're saying, and if that's come from Ms. Neufeld one way or the other, but it doesn't line up. I mean, I don't see anything there for 11,000 square feet, and the 9,000 square feet is actually lower than than the other 2 below. So anyway, it's confusing for me as a panel member to hear what you're saying and then look at your breakdown and try to figure out what's actually happening here. But anyway, that's all I had. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Ian.
I just have a question about the land plan, 11.85 land plan ratio. What would be the norm for a industrial warehouse area, land plan area in this area, in this location?
Yeah, see, and this is, and what happens on occasion is, sometimes if our rents are perceived as being too high, there's value in the land. And so to answer your question, normally it's 4-to-1, but there's a lot of circumstances where buildings have gone through expansions where they've decided for operational purposes that the 4-to-1's not the be all end all, and they'll do building expansions at the cost of a 4-to-1 ratio. And so with that being said, based on the location of where the property is, if there's an issue with the rents that we're using for the warehouse space, an argument could be made that there should be a surplus land calculation where whatever the difference is found in rent could be added on to the land value of this property in terms of surplus land.
Okay, thank you.
I thank you. I guess, Mr. Frolick, you're sort of at a disadvantage in regards to you don't know what the inside is like, and you're just following along what Mr. Neufeld presented prior to. So I guess the big argument is that I'm looking at the calculations on the square foot, the number of square, and you're using $8.89 and $9.53 and $9.45. And that is almost like for the office area, and I'm not sure what the back area consists of. So it's sort of, it leaves us in an awkward position. I guess we're gonna talk about it probably later. Anyways, that's all I have to say. Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
You know what, just if I could add one other thing to this. And because, the file notes in 2015, there was a net rent reported at $10.44 based on an income and expense mailer in 2015. And so that's what we have, that's been documented here. But in fairness, there is, we have two, I am at a disadvantage here because I'm following the lead from the previous appeals, and that gives us a guideline moving forward. And with that being said, if our overall office rent seems to be a bit, if our office rent seems a bit lower, it sort of makes up for the fact that generally speaking, office rents are higher in the Southwest quadrant. And so for whatever deficiency there is, or say if we overcalculated the net rent for the warehousing space, that sort of would factor in the value of the land and would also factor in the value that our actual office rents are a bit lower than what they should be. Anyways, thank you for your time and allowing me to explain that.
I guess, because you're so familiar with it, or following the lead, plus Mr. Newfield's, knows the property, etc. I mean, we as panel members have to evaluate all of this. So it makes it kind of difficult for us. Anyways, Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
Thank you. Well, I don't know if I should be flattered that they listen to me. It doesn't seem to be everything they listen to me on. Now, what I have emailed you is the assessor talked about listening to me, so I sent you what I sent them originally, that he's not listening to me on. This was an older presentation to the Board of Revision and to the assessor. There is a typo, of course, on our page 1. It's not office shop, it's first floor mezzanine. That's what it should read. So that's just plain old laziness. The first floor area is approximately 9,000 feet, and on the picture, that's the shed. And then the office portion is 2,600 plan area, and the upper area is well, it's 2,600 in area. And I guess you'll notice that there's a difference between what the assessor has and what we have. I imagine they've cut out the 400 feet that's open area and not counting it for the second floor. The reason we didn't do it that way is, first of all, we didn't know that they had done it, and secondly, if you take a look at the income and expense forms, the owner says 14,000 feet. So I'm not. There's a penalty if you bring a different fact than what the mailer says. So we're not taking a chance on that one. Rent we put on it is $6, and this is a metal fabrication shop, period. They make fences and metal doors, and all that space in the yard is occupied by their stock. They're mostly aluminum welders, which is a little bit different than steel. Vacancy is the same issue as the other Fort Garry's. The Fort Garry is real industrial is bad. Phony industrial, like big box stores, is great, but real industrial, this is a manufacturing, just like the other one we talked about today. This is just down the street, real working space. Now, this usage would not be allowed in M2. this is M3 zone usage, aluminum fabrication. Same issue with the shortfall. You know, this is the actual calculation of shortfall. We've this is owner occupied, by the way, and so we've used the standard 5% for non-recoverables which exist. The place where we're a little bit more lenient on this property is the cap side. You'll note that the factor, and this is page 2, the factor of the rezoning being difficult, that you wouldn't get the same use back in. That's really its major drawback. Other than that, it's a decent piece of property. It has some visibility from Kenaston, and aluminum manufacturing is not toxic. It's deemed, people think it is, but there's just some sparks and the occasional piece of aluminum that flies off the flake, but it's not a toxic use. So building is not new. The improvements are basic. The shed building is a shed building, full frame shed. Regardless, it's if you look at our model on cap rate 6 to 6.75, it's at the upper end of the range as a decent industrial site, and mostly the location factors. That and the $6 rent is derived from. Sorry, I should get into that. Is looking at our rents. And we looked at page 3 and 4, and what I neglected to say earlier is that these rents are all verified rents. They don't contain, we make sure that they're actually net rents. We make sure they don't include any sort of creative financing or inducements. These are clean rents. And if you look at this range of rents of reliable industrial rents that we have listed, and the range of them, they really pretty much top out at 695, and the one at 695 is an older one, and that's actually Home Depot's Jobbers site, but it is an older one. The newer ones are the superior ones will be in the $6 range, and that was our thinking on this. For example, on Dublin, a $6 rent for 19,000 feet. We were just looking at the top of the range for the reliable rents. There's a few more smaller sites, and there's some on St. James, which would be similar. And I'm looking on page 4, similar location attributes. And other than the rebuttal I sent to the assessor's comments about relying on what I sent him, that's all I have to say.
I thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Mr. Pollock.
I'm just looking at the rebuttal information right now. So the 2,600 square feet.
Let's deal, Mr. Pollock, let's deal with your questions, and then we'll get into the rebuttal after.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Mr. Neufeld, I referenced.
Questions of Mr. Neufeld?
Yep, I am. Mr. Neufeld, do you know why he reported a $10.44 rent in 2004 and the income and expense mailer in 2015?
2015, is this in evidence?
No, but I'm just asking a question about that because we base our market values on information that's been given to us in the past.
Well, first of all, it's owner occupied. Second, the man makes aluminum products. He's not an accountant or an appraiser. What do you expect?
And so in terms of just give me one sec here. And so has this property ever been vacated?
Not to my knowledge. No, I think they've been in there. I think they built it.
Okay. And so how did you get the shortfall rate?
It was our estimate of the actual.
Okay, but you don't have any actuals in your brief with regards to shortfalls for this property.
Oh, on this one, we had some historic information on it, from some older mailers. So, some of it was based on that.
From mailers, but
Well, they got to report their expenses, so we had those.
and have you done an adjustment to land to building ratio with regards to the value of this property? Have you not placed any value on land to building ratio?
In this case, I think that the rent at the higher end of the manufacturing scale and the capitalization rate at the lower end of the manufacturing scale are all that's necessary to deal with the concept of land. There's no such thing as a land adjustment. That does not exist. That's a invention of tax, really.
Really?
If you want to do a land adjustment, there are better ways of doing it.
So when you do, so at the municipal board, don't you do a land adjustment in your cap rate studies at the municipal board?
What we'll do for the cap rate side is we'll take it into account if it's a negative factor. And if you want to look at it in a positive factor, there are a couple of ways of doing it are analysis of finding properties with similar sizes of land ratios and seeing what their rents are and seeing if there's something that shows up.
So you never add value to land at a board or revision hearing, but you'll do adjustments to land at a municipal board hearing. Is that correct?
No. We look for it in the capitalization and see, and under the capitalization, page 2, we would look at excess density, right? And we only apply the excess density if we have a negative factor, if it falls below. So for example, 321 McDermott, which we just heard, should be treated with a negative factor for excess density because it's fully developed land. And that's what we would do.
But this is a positive density, if I got your termination correct. So would there not be a factor that would improve the cap rate?
Well, it hasn't been proven that it's a positive density. You're surmising that in the assessment.
Gentlemen, I think we're getting off the beaten track. So let's concentrate on what we have in front of us.
Okay. So
all I can say is that they're running out of land for their operation and they've bought another piece of land. I mentioned it earlier about a sale when I was talking about 99 Los, and that was this company buying excess land to continue to store their products on it. So it's not enough for them.
So is Wallace and Wallace different than Univar?
Yeah, they're different companies.
So you said 90 Lawson bought land?
I mentioned that there was a sale when I was talking to 99 Lawson about.
No other questions, thank you.
About a sale of land, and this was the person who bought it.
No.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens, questions?
Just on the rental rates and on your comps, I'm scrolling through here. I don't see much or anything that's on either of the pages that is in the same neighborhood. Would that be correct, or am I missing something here?
No, and that's a fair call because it's not the best investment rental neighborhood. It attracts a lot of owner occupants. I mentioned earlier question. There's 110 Lawson, and that's an older lease. This is actually the same party who rented land the building across the street at 625, and then he bought it after that. But it's older. And then there's 1370 Sony, which is on McGilvery at 550. It hasn't seen a lot of activity on that basis. I mean, most of the investment markets are rentals are St. Boniface and Inkster and St. James. Difficult to find them elsewhere.
Okay, thanks. And also, you've put the same rental rate on the office space and the warehouse space as well, correct?
Yeah, you can't rent them separately. And it's just that office is an accessory use to the main use, which is manufacturing. Need an office for the manufacturing.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
I thank you, Ms. Mahone.
Yes, I'm just looking at the income and expense mailer and the trying to reconcile your rent that the reduced amount and the stated, well, $138,160. And you said this was owner occupied?
Yes, it's right now, I won't use their names, but the father started the business, the son got into business, and the father kept the real estate, and the son continues to operate the business, and he set up a book rent. It means nothing.
So he set up a book rent, but looking again at the income and expense mailer, it has Wallace and Wallace with a lease start of 1999. So that's not accurate either.
Well, the book rent would have been written when they were working together. That's just what they use. And what happens, I mean, with any business, they're going to run. There's I believe that there is. You can put yourself in a better position tax-wise by separating your operating company from your real estate holding company, which, you know, after the act of the change in the income tax act that says you're allowed to arrange your affairs to pay less taxes, you just saw a lot more of this where they would do it, holdcos and operating companies. And one gets to deal with depreciation if there's any, and they remove there's a capital gains advantage at the end. So I don't get into it much. All I know is that they are one and the same.
Okay, thank you.
Met them, I know them well.
I thank you. Mr. Newfield, you have rebuttal, so let's go to that.
Yeah, it's and I'm sorry we're dragging this on, but I didn't know I would come up. This is what I have supplied the assessment department with, and you'll see that the space is clearly explained. 11,600 plan, 2,600 mez, and there's some racking that at one point the assessor had in. The assessor says that I called it office, and he was relying on me. On page, on the third page, that's what they do inside there. There's a guy welding aluminum racking, and that's the inside of the place. It's not office, and this is what I told him it was.
So,
Mr. Fullock, go ahead.
but I just want to figure this out there. So what portion of the first floor space of the plan area of 11,600 is a part of that office?
11,600 be 2,600 would be main floor in the office portion, and then 9,000 for the working portion. And I'm now looking at this here. I got a feeling our discrepancy on the mez is, there it is. Okay. Yeah, I don't remember everything. On page 3, there's an office, a foreman's mez in the shop. You see that?
Yep.
So that's why we went with the space we did.
So is there any second floor space in this building then that's dedicated to office?
In the office. So I don't have the direct actual measurement. The second floor in the office is the same plan area, but the front is all open area. So it doesn't really count as office. I think that this number of 11,600 and 26,000 was done working with, I want to say Steve Olden. We went out and measured it.
Because like what would make sense here, because if there's open space here in terms of the difference here and why there's a discrepancy. So if we go 9,000 plus 2,600 times 2 equals 14,200.
Yeah, but it's not quite
but there's
that.
400 square feet of mez space there that's taken out. So then what would end up happening is out of that 26, I'm just trying to get it right moving forward, right? So then, for example, if we got 5,200 minus 400, then we got 4,800 square feet of office space. Does that seem reasonable?
Well, again, I don't know if we're gonna figure it out today. You're gonna have to go out and remeasure. I'm looking at my old notes here, and this was what I thought. I misspoke earlier. It looks to me like we agreed on 2,200 on the second floor office, and then another 400 in the shop area for the foreman's area. And it was ended up being what we settled on. And at the time, they were trying to assess the fabric things and racking and all sorts of things. So
Okay.
it was an agreement we made, and the city changed the number. And okay, this is what you're presenting. This is what I'm presenting. So the board's got it. They can do what they like.
I'm just trying to make the adjustment moving forward, right?
Hey,
And
but
so,
that's not our function today.
I understand, but I want to get understanding of it, right? Because that concludes. Thank you.
Ms. Stevens?
No, I have no questions on the rebuttal. Thanks.
None, thanks.
Okay. Either party want summation?
Well, thank you.
Good.
Okay. 1175 Volks Avenue, Mr. Frolick, whenever you're ready.
Let me just get on next, please. File numbers 22, 2666. Roll numbers 12070060 The assessed value that we have for this property is 4,785. Property was built in 2016 and has 24-foot wall height. We have a land area of 101,165, a leasable area of 27,800. We have a land to building ratio of 3.64. Property owner has been compliant with regards to completing income and expense mailer information. There is a lease in place for $9 that was signed in 2017. And here's some pictures of the subject property. Page 4 shows where it's located at and just the general layout of the building. And that's page 5. What we have here is our model generated rent is $10.35. Using 27,800 square feet. We come up with a net operating income of 287,730, using 3.5% vacancy, 3% for expenses, 385 for shortfall. We come up with a net operating income of 265,583. Utilizing a 5.5% cap rate, we come up with a value of 4,785,000. What we have here is we have a series of leases that are all in the same vicinity as the subject property. From some from 2012, some as old as 2019. All are similar size to properties. The ranges are from 23,000 to 31,000. All of our comparables are built in the year 2000, and the range of rents range from $9 to $15.50. Our cap rate studies are located on page 9. And this is a model generated rent. And so even though the actuals are $9, to be reflective of market conditions, we used $10.35 here as a rent. Mailers on page 23 and page 24. And that concludes my formal presentation. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Newfield.
You're mute, Mr. Newfield.
You call it a flex warehouse. Who is the tenant?
There's one tenant here, but properties like this are defined as similar to being a flex warehouse.
Okay, but it's not a flex warehouse, is it?
It's an industrial strip mall. Like how the layout for this property is, but we have it listed as a flex warehouse.
Okay, yeah, it's not, I'm asking, page 3, that's not a flex warehouse, that's a place structure, right?
That's a play structure, yes.
Okay. And on your page, I was just looking, I'm just curious about the way you listed these sales. Why do we have 3 years apart, 2 sales listed at the same amount?
That's probably what was registered at land titles when we had it. So I would have to double check that quickly.
Okay, but you don't know, that's fine. I'm just wondering if you knew. Do you have any capitalization rates for play structures in the city's base database?
No, there are no play structures, but what happens is we're looking at a building that is built in 2016 that's in a great location with a 24-foot wall height. So it's a very desirable building here.
You say a great location. What do you know about the access to this site?
Well, I know there are properties on Wilkes and there's access via Sterling Lion.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
I thank you, Ms. Stevens.
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
I thank you in.
No, I don't, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Froelich, have you been to this property at all?
No, I've never been in this property.
Ever had the chance to play inside?
You know what? No, I have not.
All right.
Okay.
Mr. Duffield, your presentation.
Thank you. So I'll be quick with my story, but I think it's funny. This is located next door to the Golf Dome. It was owned by the city of Winnipeg, and they put it up for proposals to purchase. Golf Dome bid twice as much as this owner did because they wanted to put a go-kart track on it. So the city wanted an enclosed structure, and they wanted it to be more of the conformity of the neighborhood. They didn't want a play structure. They didn't want it to be recreational. So it turns out it was another client of mine who took the winning bid on it at half the price that was offered by the Golf Dome. But with that sale price, there was also a requirement to agree to the city, to giving your proxy vote to the city when redevelopment would have occurred on Wilkes. Wilkes at this point is ditches, and so the cost of making the street, putting the curbing in, is all borne by the owners, and they'll amortize it on your taxes, but they pay for it, and the city doesn't have the ability to need a 50% vote to make this happen. And the Golf Dome said, no, we don't want it to happen. This is just the past history. So then the land sat empty for a while. The confusion on the transfers was that there was actually 2 sets of transfers for the city to get it, to move it from their surplus land program or whatever it is into another department that was allowed to sell it, and then they completed the sale 3 years later. That's how long it takes to buy city land. It ended up sitting empty, undeveloped for quite some time, and the owner was trying to attract people on they wanted to get a tenant first before they did any sort of development, and wanted a lease first, and nothing happened. So they began construction around, I think it was 2015, 16, and they built this building, and they designed it as a warehouse, a little warehouse. 27,000 is little. Sat empty for another year and a half, and the first offer they finally got was the what do they call themselves? The fun park. The deal closed in August of 2017. Possession wasn't till a year later, because there were problems with the tenant raising finances, and the owner paid a ton of TI out on this to get them in, and it's not reflected in the statements. So the TI was all, so they're already in a really negative position here for value. everybody in the brokerage world knows the story. They had a hard time getting a tenant. So this was exposed for a long period of time, and all they could get was $9 after paying several $100,000 in TIs. You'll note that on page 3 that the tenant also got assistance to pay their rent from the government because they were shut down during COVID. We're not taking that into account. It's a $9 face rate, and we're going to have to live with it. The vacancy, in this case, really shows you the problem with Fort Garry vacancy. The length of time that this sat empty between the time it was built and the time they actually got some rent paid ended up being 2 years. So 11.6 is very reasonable on that basis. Same issues with non-recoverables. Now, as far as this statement goes, I know we can't make a mistake on this one because we're using the face rate. The existing statement is quite flawed because of the government assistance, and it's not allocated to any specific year. But it looks to me like 202,000 in income, gross net profit 202,000, and the rent's 250. So there are some significant non-recoverables in there, and oh, I see. They were captured in their actual amount of $50,000 rather than the percentage. So we are treating this as a semi-gross lease. Absolutely no double dipping here. And as the cap rate, as a new building with a decent height and an interesting location, we expect it to cap lower. But it really hasn't performed in that basis. And one of the problems on Wilkes is that Wilkes at this point, so this is the juncture of where Lorimer hits Wilkes coming from Sterling Lyon. Of course, at the time this building was built, that road wasn't in service. And continuing down Wilkes ends in a dead end. You can come onto Wilkes from Kenaston on an off ramp only. So it's not the greatest location, and it has had some limitations. Colliers have a lot of property that we're working with in this particular area. Most of the resistance has come from the poor transportation networks. That it's just not what is good. And give you an idea, I mean, the Golf Dome is the perfect use here because it's destination oriented. You don't say, I'm going to look around for somewhere to go. You know you're going to the Golf Dome. So that's destination orientation. And so being 6.5 is I guess that's quite a low cap rate. As far as the Colliers rates go, it is at the lower end of the scale, and I think this is a very, very good valuation. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Mr. Pollock, questions of Mr. Neufeld?
So, Mr. Neufeld, what's on page 3 of your brief? What is the total non-recoverable expenses listed?
Well, yeah, no, it's not written that way. The way it's written is the statement is written is they list the incomes and recoveries and subtract the expenses, and after everything's been covered, the net the income as full is 202,000. And you'll note that the rent at $9 would be 250,000. So the non-recoverables are 50,000 or 48,000.
Okay, but when we're looking at the rent roll on here, they have common area expenses at 181, management fees at 51 cent, tax estimates at 327. So that works out to $5.59 for actual shortfall, yet you're reporting $7.57.
That's our projected shortfall based on those expenses and the tax changes. You'll note that the statement is older and it's at a lower a lower assessed value. historic performance on this site has been much worse. First year of operation was a net loss of $84,000.
So you told us a long story with regards to the history of the property. Is any of that in your evidence?
No, but you see, I was there, so I can testify to it.
Okay. And for example, so a couple doors down, there's industrial flex warehouse on Wilkes. Has the poor location affected market rents there?
That went in at a different time, and that went in as what's the name of that? They had the tenants first, and then they built the location, and they had a long-term lease. So that one was a different process. This one ended up being built on spec without a tenancy, and it turned out to not work.
Yeah, and by any chance, because you're able to speak to it, are the rents there significantly higher than the $9 that you're quoting here today?
I'm not sure what they are.
Okay. No other questions. Thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Stevens, questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mahone?
No, I don't have any, thanks.
Okay.
Sorry, was there a question? Because something broke up. I didn't catch.
No.
Okay.
Mr. Frolick, the cap rate of 5.55, because of the age, location?
Both of those factors, yes. So the Southwest Quadrant has the highest market rents and one of the lower vacancies for industrial type properties. And the comment's been made that we've only looked at properties that are in Lawson today, but there's a lot of industrial properties in Fort Garry that are on Chevrier, that are on Clarence, and they also make up a part of the warehousing, the industrial warehousing market that is here. And so when we've done our studies and we've looked at other people's analyses, we include all those other areas. And because the Fort Garry Industrial Park is significant, and this is a part of the entire industrial park area. It's not the Keniston Industrial Park. It's the Fort Garry Industrial Park. So it's all those factors play into it.
All right. Mr. Neufeld, your presentation?
I made it, didn't I?
No.
For Wilkes?
You did? Yeah, okay. Sorry.
I thought so too, but
okay. Summation, either party?
I'm fine.
Okay. Mr. Neufeld, you're okay?
I think everything was said.
Okay. Let's go to the last one on the docket, which is 115 Lawson Crescent. So, Mr. Frolick, whenever you're ready.
File number is 223856. Roll number is 10001436100. The assessed value that we have for this property is $4,599,000. Property was built between 1981 and 1998. You have effective year of 1989. Wall heights between 10 and 25 feet. We have a land area of 320,944, and we have a leasable area of 48,808 with a land to building ratio of 4.85. Property owner has been compliant with regards to filling out income and expense mailers. And there was a couple $1 sales with the sworn values at 2.877 million. And we're showing a subject property lease of Wallace International on March 1st, 2021, 48,800 square feet at $6.75. I have not inspected this property. And then you have one of the pictures on page 2, some additional pictures on page 3. And what we also have here is on page 4 and 5. I have not inspected this, but I guess this is from Mr. Newfield's brief from 2020. Just showing the general layout of what the building looks like inside. And some additional pictures on page 6. What we have here is we have a rental rate of $7.04 on 48,808. Using a 3.5% vacancy, we come up with a net operating income of 331,582. Factoring 3% for expenses, 385 for shortfall. Net operating income of 315,058. We come up with a net operating value, a cap rate of 6.85. We come up with a net property value of 4,599,000. What we do have here is that on page 8, we have some comparable rents of similar sized properties. You know, the rents are from 2000, the lease starts are from 2015 to 2020. The leasable areas are between 30,000 and 42,781. Wall heights are between 10 feet and between like 31 feet. And the rents are from $6.95 to $11. We've looked at our cap rate information here. So even though we're showing a net lease, it is owner occupied. So this is another example of a book rent, because we had looked at that other book rent at Wallace and Wallace on further down, and they had reported $10.40 in previous years. And that's a much smaller property. This property here is 48,800 square feet. And this is where we get that $6.75. There is a note here on page 16 that they purchased the building as of March 20th. And they don't have any more information on there. And this is what they sent us in the 2020 income and expense mailer. That concludes my formal presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Newfield?
It's, so you're calling this a book rent?
Well, there's conflicting information here, right? So on page 16, it says it's owner occupied. And then it shows on page 17, it's owner occupied. And then they're showing a net lease. So this is a situation where we're not too sure if it's a book rent or not, because there's conflicting information here.
Okay, so that's in the mailer. This is all you have. You don't, okay, never mind. I won't ask you this because then you don't have this information. So right now it's owner occupied. So your evaluation was done then by the model?
Yep.
And same answers as before, is where all the numbers, where the vacancy came from and everything else. It's all model. Okay.
Yep.
The pictures that are clipped out in here, were these copies taken from another submission?
I think they're from your brief in 2020.
Okay, you should ask me for the originals. I'd give them to you.
Well, you know, it's Mr. Newfield, you're busy enough as it is.
Okay, those are my questions. Thanks.
I thank you. Ms. Stevens?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Mahone?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
What can you tell us about the sworn value in March of 2021?
So unfortunately, they didn't complete out the sales mailer for that, so I have no information on with regards to that. But you know, if
all right,
there's two sales here. There's some reference to it in the mailer, but you know, I can't speculate, so I don't know.
All right, we can ask the applicant. Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
Thank you. So the I'm just gonna do a bit of back and forth here in regard to the sale. So you'll notice that the assessor is reporting two sales, again, a duplicate sale, same amount, sworn value on the same date. So what happened here is that Wallace and Wallace were renting the property at $675 a foot. And the opportunity came to buy, and they purchased the corporation, not the real estate. So it was a share sale. It registers at $1, and they put the sworn value, which was the amount of money that exchanged hands, 2.8 million. Then on the same day, what people normally do is to start a clean corporation, is they then transfer it from the old corporation to a new one they have. So you'll note that the ownership is a numbered company that starts with, you can see this is a new corporation by the sequential numbers. It's starts with 100, so this is a very, very new company. They formed a new company and did another transfer on the same day, and therefore eliminating any risk of future liabilities that the former corporation could have, or not eliminating them, but you know, they close the corporation down, and after a period of time they're clean. So this is the amount that it changed hands by, what's he got here, 2,887,000. And on our page 3 is the original lease when they were a tenant, and it is $675 a square foot. So we decided that that was a fair open market negotiation. And in this case, you know, there was a fair amount of land, and Wallace, who have the place right across the street that you just heard at 130 Lowson. Oh, they own 130 and they own 90. We're in desperate need of more land. So this a bit motivated in their part to get into it. And they make fences in there. So this is the commercial fences that are there in there, and the assessors reproduce all our pictures. I don't know why we don't put them in, but I took those pictures. I've been in the building. It's manufacturing, nothing pretty about it. It's in actually fairly rough shape, all things considering. The vacancy is, again, Fort Garry just has a higher vacancy, and we know it in our business. People want to track it differently, that's fine, but as I said, you can get any report you want, but the Johnson report actually details every building that has a vacancy. And this is what is so good about it, because you can see get the transparency. So we're comfortable with that number for true industrial, not alternate uses. Non-recoverables, we've used a 5% allowance again, and we have no access to the former books and don't know what they are, but this is a very typical, or so this is the market rate, and the market dictates non-recoverables. And as I said before, there are non-recoverables everywhere. The shortfall was estimated on the actuals, and again, this takes into account that the assessor's model of 385 does not take into account $6 rents. It's higher because the taxes are higher, and it's not one size fits all. Cap rate, we're relatively close on it, and you know, our concern, again, probably the major difference is that this is another one of those M3 zone lots that will be zoned out of existence. Now, because Wallace had been using the site and renting it in the past, and then they bought it, they got to continue their usage. So that's, for them, it works. But if there's a change in what they do, then there's a risk of losing the zoning. And because this is even closer to IKEA, it would be, you know, one of these real push to have an M2 in there that they can put retailing. That seems to be the flavor. And our value then is $3,407,000. I think this is, again, quite very reasonable. We got a paid rent, and I did put pictures. We did put pictures in, good ones. So you can see the space. Metal pre-engineered building, nothing fancy. All working space, and you can see I mentioned across the street they were doing aluminum, so you can see in this building that there's more steel being used, and so this would be the different facilities that they do. work on. Most of this is for export. That they're making in this area here, which is a good thing for Winnipeg. We actually have somebody who makes something and sells it somewhere else. That's real value added. I think these numbers are solid. Thank you. That's my presentation.
I thank you. Mr. Frolick?
So if you're comfortable with the $6.75 rent here on a building which is 48,000 square feet, can you explain to me why you used a $6 rent on a building that's significantly smaller, which is a part of Wallace and Wallace, which has a much higher land to building ratio than the subject property? So you're comfortable with the $6.75 here, but you use $6 on a property which is much smaller in size, which would lead us to believe that the rent should be higher, which had a much higher land to building ratio, which should also put a premium on that. So can you explain to me the differences between the two?
Something, we're gonna stop right there because it's really, you're talking about another property. Let's talk about this property. So, I mean, if we had more time, we could probably deal with that, but we're concentrating on this property here. So just don't.
Well, it's about methodology. And
Yeah.
so what ends up happening is that, well, the point is the question's been stated. Okay. And so how did you do your shortfall analysis again for this property based on previous years?
Well, the shortfall was our estimate again, looking at the costs, and just to beg the chair's indulgence, the answer is simple to his question. It's better building for working in, for making stuff in. We don't grade them on stuff that doesn't count. Utility counts. Look at this, higher ceilings, greater clear span. You can make more stuff in it, therefore it's worth more.
But you're using usually smaller spaces usually have higher rents, do they not?
No, not for this type of building. It's utility. What are you making in it? Does it work?
No other questions.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahone.
No questions, thank you.
I just have one question, Mr. Newfield. Land titles once are pound of flesh in regards to transfers. So how do they get by with a share transfer through land titles?
Well, like they did is they have to provide a sworn value, and then they have to provide some documentary evidence on the sworn value, and they'll have to get a lawyer to swear by it. Sometimes they force you to hire an appraiser if it's a little muddy, but if the lawyer swears to it, that means he's controlling the cash that's going through, and he's under obligations in his profession to report a fair sale. So
it obviously cleared land titles with the sworn value of $2,887,500.
correct.
Okay. All right. Summation, either party?
Oh, thank you.
This is our last one, right?
Yes.
Okay, so apologies for the earlier confusions on these. I like getting it right, and sometimes we have to make changes and we don't have time. I think we've been very, very consistent on our approach. These are all working sites. These aren't pretty sites. These aren't offices. Today we dealt with dirty working sites, and they are their own market, which the assessment department does not have accurate models for. Thank you.
I thank you, Mr. Frolick. Summation, if you'd like. Or are you okay?
I'm fine.
All right. Mr. Frolick, thank you very kindly for your presentations, and Mr. Newfield, ditto, and results very soon. We have heard all the scheduled items, and this hearing is now adjourned.
Am I better behaved than yesterday?
I'm sorry?
I'm better behaved than yesterday?
Yeah.
Well, yesterday was Sunday, Mr. Neufeld, so I hope you behaved. But Rocky, what happened?